Chapter 101, Physique, 15 points health, 150/150 points stamina, 10/15 points defense. 15 points, what's going on? How did my physique attribute increase again? Didn't the school say that attributes get harder to raise the higher they are? This isn't hard at all. Shen Xingyan knew his attributes must have increased again, based on the unusual feeling he just experienced. Sure enough, after checking the attribute panel in his star origin card, he found that all 4 attributes had improved, which pleasantly surprised him while also making him question that common knowledge again. It seems that improving my daily exercise routine has a very significant impact on attribute improvement. However, while attribute improvement is a good thing, why do I feel a bit uneasy? Shen Xingyan couldn't help but think this. If others knew of Shen Xingyan's humble-bragging thoughts, they might not be able to resist the urge to attack him with their weapons. Unable to figure it out, Shen Xingyan could only helplessly give up. It was only then that he realized it was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This workout of mine lasted 5 or 6 hours, yet I don't feel very hungry. It's truly miraculous. Shen Xingyan felt his current state and couldn't help but secretly marvel. He then returned to his room on the first floor and quickly went to the new kitchen to make something simple to eat. Although he didn't feel very hungry now, he still had to go for strength and agility training later, so making energy reserves in advance was very necessary. Fortunately, after moving, his journey to the training hall was much shorter. Within a few minutes, he arrived at the training hall next to the school. "Little Shen, you're a bit late today," and Ning said with a light chuckle when she saw Shen Xingyan, who was usually very punctual, arriving at this time. Shen Xingyan smiled and replied, "Sister Ning, I was delayed by something today." He naturally wouldn't reveal the specific reason, only speaking vaguely. "Young man, it's better to pay attention to your body." And Ning's mind flashed, and she suddenly recalled the story she had fabricated yesterday, speaking earnestly. Shen Xingyan, who didn't understand the meaning in Ning's words, just assumed she was concerned about him. He nodded slightly in thanks and then headed straight for the strength training area, and Ning looked at Shen Xingyan's back with a meaningful smile. Shen Xingyan's afternoon strength and agility training still continued until his sister finished school. As this time slot was when he summoned his little skeletons, and there could be no delay. After having dinner with his sister, he went directly to the planting space and summoned 2 freshly unearthed little skeletons. The number of his little skeletons also increased to 24. After summoning the little skeletons, he did not return to the real world but waited for the skill cooldown. Due to the significant reduction in cooldown time after the skill upgrade, the 2 days once again aligned with the talent skill. Looking at the 3-day broccoli that would mature in a few hours, Shen Xingyan didn't hold much hope for the final yield. After all, the growth cycle was there, and its value was a bit low for him now. Therefore, he did not postpone the use of the farmer skill because of this. After the cooldown was complete, he still cast the farmer skill as usual. "Congratulations, you have successfully used your farmer skill. Farmer profession experience +1. Seeing this successful cast prompt appear, Shen Xingyan and the little skeletons knew that their busy labor time was about to begin again. Having gained experience this time, Shen Xingyan immediately activated Gale Step at the beginning of his labor. And to save stamina, he also greatly reduced the effect of Gale Step. Although this did not increase his attributes much, his labor efficiency also improved significantly, and this also allowed him to maintain a long period of labor rhythm. "Let's finish this busy session today. Tomorrow will be easier." It's a pity that the skeleton's berserk skill will only finish cooling down in a few hours, which is a bit inconvenient. As Shen Xingyan thought this, he assigned 6 little skeletons to each of the 3 acres of strawberry fields, 4 to the watermelon area, and 1 each to the chili and potato fields. He, meanwhile, continued to act as a firefighter, moving with Gale Step. As the growth rate of the crops returned to normal, the star origin prompts began to become more aggressive, frequently giving Shen Xingyan and his team double prompts, leaving Shen Xingyan, the firefighter, scrambling to cope without a moment's rest. Maintaining this frequency for nearly 2 hours, the star origin maintenance prompts finally slowed down their appearance. At least the double prompts no longer appeared. After noticing this situation, Shen Xingyin, feeling somewhat exhausted, returned to the field's edge to rest. It's really not easy. I finally made it through. I really envy these little skeletons who have no stamina limitations. Ultimately, it's still a labor shortage. I hope that, after breaking the record later, I'll quickly get a talent stone to rapidly grow my skeleton army. Shen Xingyin sat on the ground, recovering his stamina, and began to fantasize. Once he had recovered some stamina, he immediately began to harvest the mature broccoli without stopping. Harvesting the broccoli was much more convenient. Shen Xingyin, holding one head of broccoli in each hand, finished harvesting all of it in less than 10 minutes. Congratulations, you have planted 600 square meters of tomato this time, with a harvest yield of 800 kilograms, earning 240 points of farmer profession experience. Shen Xingyin looked at the yield in the prompt, which was within his expectations, so he didn't even check the broccoli's attributes. Just by looking at the yield, he knew it was definitely of ordinary grade. He simply opened the Star Origin Mall and sold all the broccoli and broccoli leaves in one go, netting a total of 24 silver coins. Shen Xingyin then took out a shovel from his backpack space and began tilling the land and planting strawberry seeds. After a period of labor, a somewhat exhausted Shen Xingyin lay directly on the ground, breathing deeply. Thinking that he had already completed the planting of strawberries on 4 acres of farmland, with 8 acres of farmland already more than halfway planted. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. It's worth being tired now. After all, these are his main force for breaking records in the future, so he must take good care of them. After eating some stamina-recovering food and checking the farmland's condition, seeing that there was still plenty of time, he returned directly to the real world. Although his stamina in the Star Origin world was depleted, his stamina in the current world was still abundant. After returning, Shen Xingyin took a moment to compose himself, then continued his physique training. Chapter 102. Little sister, why are you here? When Shen Xingyin arrived in the basement, he saw his younger sister, Shen Xingying, there and couldn't help but say in surprise. Shen Xingying, who was focused on her cultivation, heard the movement and turned to see her brother. Fearing that he would blame her for not resting properly, she immediately smiled apologetically and said, "Brother, I just ate too much dinner, so I came here to digest it." "Your digestion movements are a bit too vigorous, aren't they?" Shen Xingyin chuckled, teasing her. How could he not know his sister's thoughts? She simply wanted to emulate him, to strengthen herself and also participate in school competitions to help with household expenses. For his sensible sister, Shen Xingyin didn't expose her excuse. He simply reminded her to cultivate in moderation, especially to pay attention to her body, and then began his own cultivation. The improved body refining movements allowed Shen Xingyin to easily immerse himself. He could feel a natural Tao in every movement. Shen Xingying, who had received her brother's permission, was about to continue her cultivation when she noticed her brother's unusual movements, and couldn't help but show a puzzled expression. How are brother's body refining movements different from before? But they look quite good. As Shen Xingying thought this, her hands involuntarily began to mimic Shen Xingyin's movements and started to cultivate. Slowly, she felt the discomfort she had previously experienced during body refining gradually disappear, and her entire movements slowly became smoother. As the cultivation progressed, gradually, the figures and movements of the elder and younger person became more and more similar. Not long after, Shen Xingyin also noticed his sister's body refining movements, which were extremely similar to his own. After considering the potential pros and cons, he smiled slightly and did not stop his sister's actions. Not only that, he even stepped forward and gave his sister some pointers on how to cultivate more effectively. After an hour of comprehension skill, his current insight was almost on par with that of the school teachers. Shen Xingyin was not worried about his sister being exposed. After all, Almost every student's body refining movements in their school had minor or major differences, making them incredibly varied. Even some teachers would modify them based on their own insight. His sister's changes would not arouse anyone's suspicion. Moreover, with the improved body refining movements and his sister's talent, her achievements would certainly surpass his own past self. He, as an older brother, was more than happy for his sister to become better and better. The brother and sister cultivated for over 2 hours in this atmosphere of teaching and cultivating. All right, the cultivation time is sufficient. You're still growing, you should understand the Tao of too much is as bad as too little. Hurry back and rest. Shen Xingyan saw that it was already past 10 o'clock and quickly urged his sister to go to bed. Shen Xingyan, who was beginning to grasp the essence of the body refining movements, was in high spirits at this time. Although she felt a bit unsatisfied hearing her brother's words, she obediently returned to her room to rest. Shen Xingyan looked at his sister's slightly reluctant back and side, shaking his head. My little sister really has the feeling of a cultivation fanatic. It's also my fault for not taking good care of her. If our parents were still alive now, my little sister would probably be a carefree little girl. After a brief moment of self-reproach, Shen Xingyan continued his cultivation until 12 o'clock, then returned to his room and reconnected to the star origin world. Inside the planting space, Shen Xingyan surveyed the pumpkin, which had already begun to take shape, and couldn't help but ponder. Tomorrow, the 6-day pumpkin will be ready for harvest. According to previous estimates, without using professional skills tomorrow, it should reach natural maturity around 8 p.m. And my professional skill should basically complete its cooldown around 4 p.m. tomorrow. At that time, with a 10% increase in growth progress, the pumpkin will just reach maturity, even 2 hours earlier than the scheduled growth time. The yield of the pumpkin should be much higher than the previous 3 crops. Shen Xingyan nodded slightly at this thought, chuckled softly, and then directly began his daily cultivate time. Through his observations and practice over the past 2 days, he found that the cultivation of primordial energy could not only help him increase his primordial energy limit, but also, those small particles seemed to be able to help him recover severely depleted physique and mental energy, which was a win-win situation. No wonder those advanced professionals could spend every day in the star origin world without leaving. The cultivation time continued until the next day, when Shen Xingyan awoke from his meditation. At this time, the feeling of being full of spirit made him instinctively stretch, opening his arms to welcome the new day. After routinely checking the growth of the crop and the current status of the star origin prompts, Shen Xingyan sighed softly. He had truly experienced the joy of being a farm owner. After interacting with Wang Kai and the others, he directly returned to the real world. After having breakfast with his sister, Shen Xingyan, like an old father, watched his sister go to school, then went to the basement to practice Dragon Elephant Fist, subduing Demon Staff and Gale Step, while waiting for the comprehension skill to cool down. After experiencing the benefits of physique cultivation yesterday, he continued to use the comprehension skill on physique cultivation today. After all, the improvement of the physique attribute affects HP, defense, and stamina, and is the most involved of the 4 major attributes, so giving it more attention is not excessive. During this hour of insight, Shen Xingyan's body refining movements also became more natural and fluid, and the entire movements had greatly improved compared to before, which he could clearly feel. What made him even more delighted was that the transparent figure in his mind also began to become clearer. He estimated that after a few more uses of the comprehension skill, he would be able to know the reason for this situation with the transparent figure. After the insight time ended, Shen Xingyan did not stay at home for long, but went directly to the training hall to begin cultivating his strength and agility. Due to the cooldown of his professional skill, he had to go to the planting space to use it around 4 p.m., so he had no choice but to adjust his training time. Upon arriving at the training hall, Shen Xingyan did not see the familiar Ning at the front desk. He figured it was probably not her working hours yet. Indeed, Shen Xingyan trained until past 3 p.m. and only saw her when he was returning the timer. After chatting with her for a few moments, he returned home to prepare his sister's dinner. Seeing that it was almost time, he directly connected to the star origin world, preparing to begin another war. Chapter 103. Wang Kai assigned 5 little skeletons to each of the 4 strawberry farmlands and 4 to the watermelon farmland. After the double prompt appears later, have one of the little skeletons go all out and leave the rest to me. Inside the planting space, Shen Xingyan held his novice staff and gave instructions to Wang Kai, who stood beside him. Today was a day when his little skeletons had the berserk skill. Each berserk little skeleton could do the work of 2 normal ones. By having them enter berserk one after another, he could ensure stable labor on each farmland. With his assistance, managing long-cycle crops like strawberries and watermelons shouldn't be a big problem. Moreover, after using his professional skill this time, the pumpkin farmland would mature directly, not requiring his attention, which invisibly reduced a lot of workload. With this arrangement, he only needed to take care of the 2 farmlands of chili peppers and potatoes, and he could oversee the overall situation for the rest of the time. Based on his experience working these past few days, and with Gale's step, the amount of labor assigned was still a bit easier than yesterday. As Shen Xingyan analyzed the situation, the other little skeletons, seeing their master pick up that small stick again, instinctively entered a state of readiness. And Shen Xingyan's capable right-hand man, Captain Wang Kai, after receiving his master's instructions, looked at the other little skeletons one by one. Without any visible body language, those ready-to-fight little skeletons began to change positions. It wasn't long before Shen Xingyan's previous plan was completed. Seeing that his little skeletons had all taken their positions, Shen Xingyan no longer hesitated and directly activated his professional skill. As his mind stirred, the primordial energy throughout his body quickly gathered at the tip of his staff, subtly indicating its imminent release. It was at this moment that the star origin alert appeared again. Ding tilde, it is detected that you are casting a professional skill on some crops that are about to mature. The casting of this skill may fail for these crops. Do you wish to continue? Shen Xingyan had anticipated this situation, as after the professional skill was successfully cast. The pumpkin's maturity was indeed about 2 hours longer than their normal cycle. Although it was only a short 2 hours, it was still in excess. Shen Xingyan confirmed to continue without hesitation, and his gathered primordial energy flowed out, affecting the entire farmland. Congratulations, you have successfully used a professional skill. Farmer Professional Experience +1. The skill effect on the partially maturing crops has failed. Feeling the primordial energy leave, Shen Xingyan was already prepared to start working. However, upon hearing the latter half of the success message, his staff, which he was about to put away, suddenly paused. Failed? It actually failed. My almost 100% success rate was broken on a crop that only accelerated by 2 hours. This is a bit outrageous. Shen Xingyan looked at the 8 farmlands in front of him. At this moment, only 7 of them were growing rapidly. The pumpkin farmland remained as before, with no significant movement. He couldn't help but pat his head, thinking with a wry smile, it seems I was too optimistic before. While the get the best deal plan is still feasible, its daily success is also affected by the probability in star origin world. This means that in the future, it won't be possible to break through star origin records every day as I previously imagined. But this time it's fine. It only wasted 2 hours of the pumpkin's growth, which is still acceptable. As Shen Xingyan was thinking with some helplessness, the effect of his professional skill was also completed, and the star origin maintenance prompts began to flood in. He shook his head and sighed, temporarily putting the matter aside. Shen Xingyan called to Wang Kai, who was beside him. Wang Kai, let's get to work. As he spoke, Gale's step was also deployed under his feet, and a swift divine eagle began to work in the fields. Although this failure was somewhat unexpected for Shen Xingyan, the arrangements for the maintenance task were not greatly affected. And with Shen Xingyan's command, all the little skeletons were instantly activated and began to work in an orderly manner. It wasn't long before the double prompt appeared, and the little skeletons entered the berserk state one by one, according to Shen Xingyan's previous arrangements. When it became truly unbearable, Shen Xingyan's figure would appear in time to push back the double prompt. After nearly 2 hours of persistent labor, the intensity of this wave of work began to slowly decrease. Shen Xingyan, who noticed this change immediately, also relaxed. He deactivated Gale Step, slowed his pace, and walked to the side of the farmland. After a period of chanting, 2 little skeletons appeared in the planting space. He gently patted the skulls of the 2 little skeletons, handed them over to Wang Kai for labor assignment, and then ate 2 tomatoes himself, lying flat on the ground, waiting for the pumpkins to mature. Only then did he have time to consider his next planting plan. To be honest, today's skill failure really caught him off guard. After all, every previous attempt had been successful, which made him subconsciously believe that this prompt was merely a notification and didn't hold much influence. However, experiencing it firsthand this time sobered him up. He felt that he shouldn't be too optimistic and that he needed to have a backup plan in the future to be truly stable. Forget it, there's no way to walk by the river without getting your shoes wet. I can't expect to be so lucky every time. Occasionally having bad luck is normal, after all, I'm already lucky enough. Shen Xingyan comforted himself in his heart and gradually began to feel some relief. After all, how can life be so smooth all the time? Occasional small setbacks are not necessarily a bad thing. As for the second preparation, he already had an idea in his mind, but the conditions were not yet ripe. As he was thinking, his stamina also slowly recovered a bit. Seeing this, he temporarily put his thoughts aside and went to the fields to continue working with the little skeletons. More than an hour later, the pumpkin maturity prompt appeared above the farmland. Shen Xingyan immediately put down his farmland work and began his harvest for the day. He was now very experienced with harvesting. As before, after a few minutes of pulling them up by the roots, the pumpkin farmland became very clean. Congratulations, you have planted 600 square meters of pumpkin this time, with a harvest yield of 2,000 kilograms, and gained 500 experience points for the farmer profession. Chapter 104. As this notification sounded, Shen Xingyan's eyes lit up. Although the skill failed, the yield and experience points look quite good, exceeding my expectations. Shen Xingyan looked at the string of numbers in the notification, his face beaming with joy. It's worth noting that tomatoes, with a growth cycle of 1 day, only gave him 60 experience points, while pumpkins, with a 6-day growth cycle, surprisingly yielded 500 experience points. This was more than 8 times the experience gained from tomatoes. Considering the growth cycle, the increase was still more than double, and this was without any professional skill bonuses. Calculated this way, his previous idea was verified. The experience bonus for long-cycle crops is inherently higher than that for short-cycle crops. This further solidified Shen Xingyan's idea of planting long-cycle crops. After all, he was a peasant professional with the summon skeleton talent. For him, no matter how long the growth cycle of crops, he wasn't afraid. Because they would eventually be planted, and with his professional skill, the final experience points harvested would be unmatched by anyone else. Shen Xingyan had this confidence in this regard. However, it was somewhat regrettable that, although the 6-day pumpkins yielded a high output, there was no record-breaking situation. Shen Xingyan waited for a while in the middle of the farmland, with a small expectation in his heart, but he didn't see any record-breaking notification from Xingyuan. He sighed inwardly. It seems those advanced peasant professionals have also put a lot of thought into crops. He smiled with a hint of emotion. Although it was a crisis-ridden era, it was also an era of talent explosion, with all sorts of strange talents and abilities emerging endlessly, and he was one of them. So he wasn't too disappointed by this situation. He then opened his inventory space, separated the pumpkin from the pumpkin vine, and then checked the attributes of both items. Pumpkin premium value, 40 copper coins quantity, 2,000 attribute, a good-tasting ingredient. Item, pumpkin vine premium value, 4 copper coins quantity, 300 attribute, an ingredient for a potion. Shen Xingyan looked at the attribute descriptions of the two items and thought with some joy. It's actually a premium quality crop. This is an unexpected surprise. This current situation made him think of the first time he harvested wheat. At that time, also without using any professional skills, he harvested premium-grade wheat just by the natural ripening of the crop. Combining this with the previous harvests of tomatoes and cucumbers, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but speculate. Is it that the longer the growth cycle of an crop, the better its quality will be, as long as there are no task stagnation penalties? Then, what about his 50-day growth cycle strawberries? Is it that as long as he has the little skeletons, even without the professional skill to accelerate the progress, the crops from the farmland will not be of too low a grade, at least premium quality or above? And if he adds his professional skill to boost it, will the quality improve even further? Moreover, ordinary quality strawberries cost 500 copper coins per kilogram, so what about premium quality or above? Will their value be even greater, and will he accumulate money faster, getting closer to a tribute extraction? Shen Xingyan repeatedly considered this idea, feeling that its possibility was not just ordinary great. The reason why there was no written record of this in the real world was probably because no one had been able to persist for such a long time without receiving the task stagnation penalty. So this pattern had not been found. Or perhaps someone knew this pattern but did not disclose it. However, whatever the reason, such a discovery was enough to bring a smile back to Shen Xingyan's lips. The negative emotions brought about by the skill failure just now were also instantly swept away. His increasingly bright eyes couldn't help but look at the 26 little skeletons working in the fields, and he couldn't help but fantasize. These are all my treasures. With these little skeletons, as long as I am steady enough and adhere to the policy of developing cautiously, my future improvement speed will become faster and faster. With a clear mind, Shen Xingyan walked to Wang Kai, squatted down, and gently pressed its little straw hat, a knowing smile on his face. It was fortunate that outsiders could not enter his planting space, otherwise, if they saw Shen Xingyan smiling so genuinely at a skeleton, they would probably get goosebumps all over. Wang Kai, who didn't understand its owner's inexplicable actions, subconsciously tilted his head, expressing his confusion. Shen Xingyan looked at Wang Kai's cute behavior and didn't say much. He gently patted him to indicate that it was nothing, and then let him continue working. He then returned to the pumpkin farmland and began the actions of tilling the land and sowing. With his current level 11 physique and the displayed attribute improvements, doing these two farmland chores was many times faster than when he and Wang Kai worked together to plant wheat. Not long after Shen Xingyan finished sowing the 5th acre of strawberries, he immediately opened the Star Origin Mall and sold both the pumpkins and pumpkin vines, receiving a total of 81 silver coins and 200 copper coins. Looking at the small amount of money credited to his account, and the feeling that the money he received daily was increasing, Shen Xingyan's mood became even more pleasant. Scanning around, Shen Xingyan saw that the 26 little skeletons were already sufficient to handle the daily maintenance tasks. So he didn't stay long in the planting space, but returned to the real world to continue exercising, as he hadn't done much of his physique training today. Back in the real world, Shen Xingyan changed into his workout clothes and went to the underground gym. As soon as he entered, he saw his sister. Seeing this, Shen Xingyan didn't know whether to praise his sister for her hard work or criticize her for not knowing how to rest. In the end, Shen Xingyan, unable to say anything harsh, could only tacitly approve of her moderate exercise. And he accompanied his sister for 2 hours of exercise, during which he taught her the body-refining movements he had just corrected today. His sister's intelligence also exceeded his imagination as an older brother. Often, with just a little guidance from him, she would quickly grasp the meaning and gradually apply it to her body-refining movements. which made Shen Xingyan feel like a master being beaten by a random punch. When the time came, Shen Xingyan told his sister to go up and rest, while he exercised until 12 o'clock before returning to the star origin world for his daily cultivate and sleep. Chapter 105. Shen Xingyan woke up from his meditative state and checked his attribute panel, finding that the primordial energy cap in the primordial energy attribute column had increased to 0. 3. He nodded slightly, realizing that he could now basically get a 0. 1 increase in his primordial energy cap every other day, which was also because he didn't spend too much time training each time. If he were to use all 12 hours he could stay in Star Origin World for cultivating, he could increase his primordial energy cap by at least 0.1 each day. But Shen Xingyan also knew that origin energy cultivation was a long-term endeavor and could not be rushed. Just like his previous training at school, as long as he persisted, there would eventually be a day of breakthrough. Shen Xingyan stood up and first checked the growth of the 5 acres of strawberry. He found that without the task stagnation penalty, the strawberry plants were growing much better than described in the data, showing a full harvest. His heart rejoiced at the sight. However, when he thought about the tough battle he would face this afternoon, he couldn't help but rub his forehead in helplessness. With the completion of planting 5 acres of strawberry, it also meant that the amount of labor required after he used his professional skill had increased again. Long cycle crop are certainly good, but they also require corresponding strength. Shen Xingyan muttered softly to himself. Now, the summoning speed of the little skeleton was completely unable to keep up with the increase in labor. Normal labor was fine, and the little skeleton's advantage was still relatively large, but as soon as they encountered situations after a skill was used, their labor force seemed a bit stretched, and he had to personally step in to resolve it. I have to say, I really miss the days when I just needed to use a skill and then had nothing else to do. Shen Xingyan sighed slightly. He temporarily put this thought aside, then slowly walked to the area where chili peppers were planted. At this time, the chili peppers were still green. According to the time, the chili peppers should have just entered the 9th day of their growth cycle, and it would take nearly 2 more days to reach maturity. But under Shen Xingyan's plus 10% growth progress professional skill, for chili peppers with a 10-day growth cycle, it could shorten the time by 1 day, meaning the chili peppers would be fully mature around 2 a.m. tonight. Shen Xingyan calculated in his mind and subconsciously thought of the scene when he harvested wheat before, and his mouth couldn't help but curve into a smile. It was important to know that for wheat, which also had a 10-day growth cycle, he had broken the star origin record by letting it mature naturally. Comparing it this way, the chili peppers he planted this time had a very high probability of breaking the record. With such anticipation, Shen Xingyan's already energetic state became even more radiant. While inspecting the farmland, he also stroked each little skeleton one by one, as a form of encouragement to them. Afterward, Shen Xingyan explained the upcoming labor principles to Wang Kai in detail, then returned to the real world to resume another day's training schedule. This time, his comprehension skill was still used for physique training. Each training session brought new gains, which made him tireless. Moreover, as the body refining movements were further optimized, the transparent figure in his mind became clearer and clearer. He could even vaguely see the complexity of the little man's movements, which were completely on a different level than his own. This discovery made him even more excited. Shen Xingyan trained in the training hall until past 1 p.m., then directly returned home. After eating a little something, he used his star origin card to connect and enter his planting space. As soon as Shen Xingyan landed, he saw the diligent labor of the skeletons, a scene that felt surprisingly harmonious to him. Although the skeletons belonged to the undead system, leaning towards death attributes, crop naturally represented the hope of life. These two extremes, which should not have appeared at the same time, were compatible within his planting space and did not seem to conflict at all. This feeling was extremely magical. It seems that the ancient saying, when things reach an extreme, they turn in the opposite direction, and yin and yang harmonize truly has its reason. It seems that while training daily, studying cannot be neglected. A wave of insight arose in Shen Xingyan's heart, and he even felt his mental energy become somewhat fuller, though he wasn't sure if it was his imagination. Not long after, he emerged from this emotional reflection, and it was now time for his professional skills cooldown to complete. After instructing Wang Kai to assign 5 little skeletons to each of the 5 acres of strawberry farmland, and 1 to take care of the watermelon farmland, he looked at his ever-increasing workload and could only sigh slightly, comforting himself with the thought of doing his best and leaving the rest to fate. With a thought from Shen Xingyan, his entire body's primordial energy began to surge out, falling upon all the farmlands. And as the notification of the successful use of the professional skill appeared, the star origin maintenance notifications came surging again like a floodgate had opened, their intensity feeling even greater than before. Shen Xingyan quickly had the few remaining skeletons use their berserk skill, while he took the lead, rushing between the various farmlands to work. At this moment, Shen Xingyan vividly demonstrated what it meant to be exhausted from running around. Working at his full capacity, he moved from one task to another, having no time to rest, not even enough time to catch his breath. During the entire maintenance task period, triple warning notifications even began to appear above the farmland. If not dealt with promptly, he would receive the first task stagnation penalty of his professional career. Fortunately, Shen Xingyan arrived in time and worked like his life depended on it, thus avoiding receiving this first penalty ticket. Although there are many firsts in a person's life, Shen Xingyan didn't really want task stagnation to be one of them. Fortunately, with Shen Xingyan's desperate labor, this first did not temporarily descend upon him. As the speed of star origin notifications began to slow down, Shen Xingyan, somewhat exhausted, finally walked out of the farmland. At this time, his physique value had completely broken through the warning line. He quickly bought a piece of roasted meat and ate it in large bites. Roasted meat was a strong stamina-recovering food, typically standard for combat professionist, though it was a bit expensive. Shen Xingyan naturally couldn't care less about the cost. While eating, he lay down on the ground and quietly recovered. After waiting for about 20 minutes, his feeling of weakness disappeared, and his physique value returned to the normal range. Farming is really not easy. It's time to go back and cultivate. Shen Xingyan sighed and returned to the real world. Chapter 106. After 3 optimizations of the comprehension skill, Shen Xingyan's current body refining movements have undergone a tremendous change. From their external appearance alone, it's hard to tell they are the same set of body refining movements, only discernible from some subtle details. Shen Xingyan also felt the optimized movements became smoother to practice, and at the same time, he felt that this set of movements greatly enhanced the improvement of his physique. Although this conjecture was not reflected in the attribute panel, Shen Xingyan could personally feel this significant improvement. While Shen Xingyan was cultivating, he also took time to have a meal with his younger sister, and then went to the planting space to summon the 2 little skeletons for the day, bringing the total number of little skeletons to 28. After entrusting them to Wang Kai's management, he returned to the real world and continued to cultivate until past 1 a.m., while waiting for the chili peppers to mature. As the time arrived, the alarm clock sound pulled Shen Xingyan out of his cultivating state. It was then that Shen Xingyan suddenly realized it was almost time to harvest the chili peppers. So he quickly returned to his room, connected his star origin card, and re-entered his planting space. As soon as he stood still, he looked at the 1 mu of chili pepper farmland that had turned a vibrant red, its eye-catching color giving him a festive feeling at first glance. He walked closer to examine it carefully, and found that the quality and quantity of chili peppers on each plant were very pleasing, making him somewhat eager for the upcoming harvest. This chili pepper farmland did not make Shen Xingyan wait long. Only a few minutes later, the harvestable icon appeared above the chili pepper farmland. Having experienced many harvests, Shen Xingyin was naturally familiar with this and immediately began harvesting with practiced ease. Although the little skeletons now had the capacity to help Shen Xingyin with the harvest, he chose not to have the little skeletons come over to help. As a small 1 mu of chili peppers, with his backpack space, would not take much effort at all. At this time, Shen Xingyin, who was harvesting, still used the same rough yet efficient method as before, directly pulling out the entire chili pepper plant by the roots and placing it into his backpack space. By now, Shen Xingyin had already experienced the physical recovery bonus from roasted meat, so he didn't need to consider his stamina at all. In this state, he only spent a little over 10 minutes to complete the chili pepper harvest. The moment he pulled out the last chili pepper plant, the star origin prompt echoed in his ears as expected. Congratulations! You have planted 600 square meters of chili peppers this time, with a harvest yield of 1,800 kilograms, earning 1125 farmer profession experience points. Upon hearing the yield in this prompt, Shen Xingyin's face lit up with joy. A yield of 1,800 kilograms exceeded his expectations, based on his previous calculations. 1,600 kilograms would have been quite good, but he hadn't expected it to be 200 kilograms more than anticipated. Shen Xingyin subconsciously began to calculate, based on ordinary chili peppers costing 55 copper coins per kilogram. His current harvest would amount to 99 silver coins, which was much higher than yesterday's high-quality pumpkin. Moreover, his chili peppers had not been subject to the star origin task stagnation penalty throughout the entire process, so according to his previous guess, the quality of this chili pepper should be of excellent grade, which means the final amount of money obtained could be significantly higher. Just as Shen Xingyin was about to separate the entire chili pepper plant using the backpack function, the star origin world prompt rang out again. Congratulations! You have broken the current record of 1,350 kilograms per mu for chili pepper yield, successfully achieving a yield of 1,800 kilograms. You are rewarded with one random rare skill. Star Origin will make a server-wide announcement. Do you wish to make the information public? The sudden appearance of the breakthrough record prompt made Shen Xingyin slightly stunned. And then, remembering his previous conjecture, a just-as-I-thought expression appeared on his face. Sure enough, chili peppers, with the same 10-day growth cycle as the previous wheat, broke the star origin record under natural maturation conditions. It seems that crops with at least a 10-day growth cycle can still break star origin world records even without using professional skills. With his idea confirmed, Shen Xingyin couldn't help but lightly clench his fist in celebration. He then temporarily suppressed the joy in his heart and looked at the random rare skill reward displayed in the prompt. This time the reward is a rare skill. Shen Xingyin's eyes burned as he looked at these words. According to his previous understanding, in addition to professional skills and talent skills, there were also other types of skills in Star Origin world. For example, during the awakening, the highest ranking officer of the base suddenly appeared, seemingly using a skill similar to spatial manipulation, but he wasn't particularly clear about the more specific details. However, there wasn't much information about Star Origin skills in the real world. It was only known that they were divided into elementary skill, intermediate skill, advanced skill, rare skill, and even higher grade skills. Furthermore, their numbers are not very large, roughly divided into buff type and offensive type, as well as some special skills. Buff type, as the name suggests, can enhance one's own status, similar to the little skeleton's berserk skill. Offensive skills, on the other hand, improve attack power, somewhat similar to martial skill, but also different. Martial skill can become powerful through cultivation, while these skills are basically fixed and can only be improved by using some special Dao items. Of course, the initial bonus effect of offensive skills is incomparable to martial skill. As for special skills, the only one he was familiar with was the base commander's spatial blink skill. As for more, Shen Xingyin was somewhat unaware. After all, the human race has only been exploring Star Origin world for a little over 100 years. And their discoveries are merely the tip of the star origin iceberg. There are still many unknowns that need to be slowly unveiled. Do you wish to make the information public? The star origin prompt pulled Shen Xingyan back from his daze, and he quickly expressed his desire to cancel the world announcement. This time, Star Origin World reacted very quickly, as soon as Shen Xingyan finished speaking. A new prompt immediately appeared. Do you wish to consume 100 silver coins to cancel this server-wide announcement? Upon seeing this prompt, Shen Xingyan nodded in agreement. After all, when it came to money, he was not at all ambiguous about spending it when necessary. Moreover, as the growth cycle of crops lengthened, 100 silver coins no longer felt as precious to him as they did at the beginning. Chapter 107. As Shen Xingyan completed the payment of 100 silver coins, the Xingyuan notification quickly disappeared, replaced by a small box-like icon that abruptly appeared before him. This should be the random skill mentioned in the notification, right? Shen Xingyan looked at the unfamiliar icon before him, subconsciously guessing, as this was the only reward this time, so nothing else could appear. But why is the random skill in the shape of a small box, and how should I proceed next? Faced with this strange icon, Shen Xingyan was unsure what to do. However, just as he was feeling puzzled, the small box before him began to spin rapidly, so fast that he could barely see it clearly. At the same time, the icon began to emit an increasingly dazzling light, giving Shen Xingyan a feeling as if it was about to explode. Seeing this, although Shen Xingyan knew the icon wouldn't harm him, he still subconsciously took a step back, maintaining a safe distance from it. In just a few seconds, the small box's rotation speed had reached its peak, and its final result was just as Shen Xingyan had felt earlier. After emitting a fierce burst of light, the small box icon instantly exploded. When the light dissipated, a small human-like icon stood silently in the place where the small box had been. Shen Xingyan was about to step forward to examine it, but the small human icon seemed to sense something. Before Shen Xingyan could react, it instantly merged into his glabella. Startled, Shen Xingyan quickly touched his glabella, but found no abnormality. This made him, experiencing such a scene for the first time, smile wryly. Is the Star Origin World's reward for a skill always this special? Just as he was about to check his attribute panel, a Xingyuan notification sound rang out. Congratulations! You have obtained a special skill clone technique rare. Consumes half of your primordial energy to generate a clone. The clone's full attributes are equal to the amount of primordial energy. Consumed any value less than 1 point will be deducted. The clone lasts for 2 hours, and the skill cooldown is 10 hours. Upon hearing this Xingyuan notification, Shen Xingyan froze in place, a confused expression on his face. He quickly reacted and opened his attribute panel, looking in disbelief at the special skill, clone technique. That was now listed under his talent skills. After reading the clone technique's skill description word by word, Shen Xingyan, afraid of making a mistake, rubbed his eyes hard and read it again. After repeating this several times, he finally confirmed that he had not misread it. At this moment, his face was filled with an expression of disbelief. Special skill clone technique, how can this skill really be this strong? Are all rare skills like this? Shen Xingyan thought, somewhat shocked. Generating a clone with all attributes equal to half of my primordial energy. Such attributes are too abnormal. Although the clone has a time limit of only 2 hours, unlike the little skeletons that can exist indefinitely, the attribute boost is truly high. Even if it's just a temporary boost, it's beyond my imagination. As Shen Xingyan thought of this, his gaze involuntarily fell on the primordial energy attribute column in his attribute panel. And he happily calculated, 40 points of primordial energy attribute, doesn't that mean I can generate a clone with all attributes at 20? Such attributes are already similar to my rank, 11 self. Such a skill might be considered average for other professional practitioners, as few professional practitioners would allocate precious free attribute points to primordial energy. In this era where strength reigns supreme, Almost all professional practitioners mostly allocate points to the 4 more offensive major attributes. And even life professional practitioners are no exception. But this skill is different for Shen Xingyan. In the early stages, due to the increasing number of farmlands, Shen Xingyan had no choice but to allocate all his free attribute points to primordial energy to maximize the effect of his professional skills. This allowed his primordial energy to reach 40 points at rank 11, its attributes far exceeding the values that professional practitioners at his stage should have. Although he initially felt some regret, the appearance of the comprehension skill made him even more determined to allocate all free attribute points to primordial energy. Moreover, when the potatoes broke the record earlier, he also gained 10 times the origin energy cultivation speed, which indicated that his primordial energy increase speed would surpass most people in the future. With these 2 methods of increasing primordial energy stacked, his primordial energy reserves would become even more terrifying in the future, while also causing his body's 4 major attributes to be far lower than those of people at the same rank. And now, he had even obtained a clone technique that had such a clear requirement for primordial energy, instantly making up for his lack of combat ability. And as his primordial energy increases in the future, his combat ability will also become even more terrifying. The clone technique, rewarded by the star origin world, made his primordial energy even more valuable. If I could extract this clone technique skill to the real world, wouldn't I be able to let the clone go to the extraterritorial world to fight enemies for me, while I safely stay in the base? Although the clone's existence time is not abundant, it can at least eliminate some disasters. Thinking about being able to eliminate disasters in such a way, Shen Xingyan grew more and more excited. He subconsciously looked at his wallet, as extracting skills required money. And when he saw the monetary figure, his originally passionate mood was instantly doused with cold water, and he deflated. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh, I still need to earn money. The little money I have now isn't even enough to extract a single attribute point, let alone such a powerful clone skill. At this moment, Shen Xingyan felt as if a penny could stump a hero. However, after a short while, he cheered up again, comforting himself. At least with this clone technique, future maintenance tasks for professional skills will be much easier. A clone with all attributes at 20 will have a work efficiency comparable to my own. Shen Xingyan wanted to summon the clone to see its specific attributes. But considering that he would be using his professional skill in less than 10 hours, he couldn't waste such a laborer. So he restrained himself from this thought. Chapter 108. After digesting the unexpected surprise of the clone technique, Shen Xingyan proceeded to check his backpack and found that all the chilies were of excellent quality, and their value reached 75 copper coins per kilogram. After selling the crop to the Star Origin Mall, he received a total of 135 silver coins. He had originally planned to immediately begin origin energy cultivation until his professional skill cooldown was complete. However, considering that labor would begin around noon, the Star Origin world time was quite tight. After all, he could still only stay in the Star Origin world for 12 hours a day, so he reluctantly returned to the real world first. With nothing to do and unwilling to waste time, he continued to exercise. Although he now had a powerful helper in the form of a clone, he could not relax. The saying, rely on a mountain and it crumbles, rely on people and they run, one must be strong oneself, was a philosophy he had held since childhood. At this time, for Shen Xingyan, whose mental energy in reality was only 10 points, he was already feeling a little sleepy, but he still forced himself to train until around 6 a.m. before stopping. After tidying up and preparing breakfast for both of them, he, now somewhat mentally fatigued, returned to his room and immediately connected to the Star Origin world. By shouting loudly, Shen Xingyan greeted the little skeletons who were working, then quickly activated the cultivate function, entering a state of meditation and sleep. At this time, under the reward of 10 times the cultivate speed, the surrounding tiny particles also suddenly appeared. frantically surging into Shen Xingyan's body while replenishing his depleted physique and mental energy. The speed was so fast that, on the attribute panel, it appeared as if 1 point could be recovered every 10-odd seconds. At the same time, his primordial energy limit was also accumulating primal energy factors little by little, storing power for future primordial energy improvements. And the increasingly numerous pale green tiny particles directly acted on Shen Xingyan's consciousness, nourishing him in a subtle, pervasive manner. The 6 hours of cultivate time passed in the state of repair and transcendence. As the meditation ended, Shen Xingyan, who was sleeping on the ground, slowly opened his eyes, feeling that his previous state of fatigue had completely vanished. He stood up and stretched a bit, saw that the time had come, thought for a moment, then opened the Star Origin Mall and spent 400 copper coins to purchase 2 bottles of Primordial Energy Recovery Potions. Item: Elementary Primordial Energy Potion value, 200 copper coins quantity, 2 attribute. Slowly restores 10 primordial energy within 1 minute, looking at the attributes of the 2 bottles of potions in his backpack. Shen Xingyan nodded slightly, thinking to himself, with these 2 bottles of elementary primordial energy potion to restore primordial energy, I can quickly replenish my primordial energy after creating a clone, making it convenient to then expend all primordial energy to cast professional skills. As Shen Xingyan thought this, his gaze also turned to the professional skill on the attribute panel that had already completed its cooldown. He no longer hesitated and began the current action. He first activated his clone technique to prepare for the upcoming Star Origin World Maintenance prompt. As his thoughts stirred, the clone technique instantly entered an activated state. Half of his entire body's primordial energy began to surge within him, rapidly gathering on the novice staff. At the same time, a trace of his consciousness also seemed to gather there, beginning to fuse with the primordial energy. This separation of consciousness felt to Shen Xingyan to have little impact. There was only a slight initial discomfort, then everything returned to normal. Once the primordial energy and his consciousness were completely fused, a visible mass of Kai formed at the top of the staff and began to expand further. Then, the expanding Kai slowly descended in front of Shen Xingyan. At this moment, a peculiar feeling began to rise in his heart. Before Shen Xingyan could fully savor the mystery within, the Kai in front of him instantly dispersed. And a person similar to Shen Xingyan, yet not entirely identical, appeared before him. This person was also dressed as a farmer, looking at him with some curiosity, and the same emotion appeared on Shen Xingyan's face. Shen Xingyan was not only curious about the appearance of his clone, but also about the 2 perspective views that appeared in his mind. One perspective was him looking at the clone, and the other was from the clone's perspective looking at him. Experiencing this multi-perspective sensation for the first time, Shen Xingyan gradually felt a sense of novelty after the initial slight discomfort. It seems I can control the other party. A subtle feeling surged into his heart after the clone was formed. As Shen Xingyan's thoughts stirred, he and the clone began to move simultaneously, and the 2 moving scenes also appeared in Shen Xingyan's mind. However, there was still a difference in these visual experiences. The main perspective was more real and clear, while the clone's perspective was much weaker in comparison. This significant difference between the main and auxiliary perspectives also ensured that he would not easily confuse them. I didn't expect the clone to actually be driven by my own consciousness, unlike the skeletons who simply execute my commands. This will make future actions very flexible. At this moment, the clone was like a character controlled by Shen Xingyan. It didn't require commands, only a thought to be immediately executed. Moreover, the advantage of dual perspectives was like having a mobile surveillance system, making future exploration of the extraterritorial world even more convenient. After gradually getting used to this sense of control, Shen Xingyan then checked the clone's attributes: name, Sparkfire Prairie's clone strength, 20 points agility, 20 points physique, 20 points spirit, 20 points health, 200/200 points physical attack, 20 points spell attack, 20 points defense. 20 points speed, 20 points duration. 2-hour countdown. Seeing the clone's attributes all at 20 points, Shen Xingyan nodded with satisfaction. Although the clone, like the little skeletons, only possessed simple basic attributes and did not have various skills and talents like himself, he was already very content. As the saying goes, one force can overcome 10 skills. In Shen Xingyan's view, as long as the attributes were high enough, everything else was just fleeting. After all, let you jump and skip, I'll knock you down with one punch. This was the kind of scenario he yearned for. Shen Xingyan then quietly consumed the primordial energy recovery potion and called the skeleton to his side to assign the upcoming labor. With the presence of the clone this time, the labor pressure was significantly reduced. Shen Xingyan assigned all the little skeletons to the strawberry farmland, leaving the rest for him and his clone to handle. As the professional skill was activated, the Star Origin World's warning prompt reappeared. Ding tilde detected that you are casting a professional skill on some crops that are about to mature. There is a possibility of failure when casting this skill on these crops. Do you wish to continue? Chapter 109. When Shen Xingyan saw the Star Origin warning prompt appear again, although he had already anticipated this situation, he still paused instinctively. After all, the previous skill failure incident was still vivid in his mind. And he clearly recognized that the possible change in that prompt was not just text, but a real limitation existing in Star Origin World. For him, who was about to harvest potatoes, if this professional skill failed again, then this plot of potatoes, which he had previously held high hopes for, could only wait for its natural maturity. And with the precedent of the last potato breakthrough record, it would be impossible to rely on the natural maturity of potatoes to break through the record this time. Shen Xingyan was very clear about this. However, it was now a situation where the arrow was on the string and had to be released. Shen Xingyan silently prayed in his heart, hoping to receive the blessing of the goddess of luck, allowing him to successfully cast the skill. Under a series of self-suggestions, he gently nodded to agree to continue. After receiving Shen Xingyan's confirmation, the Star Origin prompt instantly disappeared, and at the same time, the primordial energy on his novice staff also responded by spreading instantly across the entire farmland, and the skill effect began to take effect. And as the primordial energy departed, Shen Xingyan's gaze also followed, looking towards the plot of potatoes in the center of the farmland. However, perhaps the goddess of luck really blessed him, or the success rate of the professional skill was triggered. The Star Origin prompt began to sound in his ears. Congratulations, you have successfully cast a professional skill, Farmer Professional Experience +1. Listening to the prompt sound in his ears, and seeing that there was no word failure at the end of the prompt, Shen Xingyan's previously worried mood instantly receded. His face once again showed a smile, and his entire spirit and energy surged. The plot of potatoes he had been watching also began to make rustling sounds. All the crops on the entire farmland now looked even more adorable in Shen Xingyan's eyes. At this moment, he was so happy that he seemed to have forgotten the large amount of labor that was about to come. As if the upcoming labor no longer required him to do anything at all. And as the rapid growth state of all crops in the farmland ended, the long-awaited maintenance prompts began to surge in. Seeing the maintenance prompts that seemed to be free, Shen Xingyan also returned to reality from his previous state of joy. Although he knew that the workload had increased again this time, he felt that these were nothing compared to the upcoming harvest. Wang Kai and my clone, let's get to work, Shen Xingyan shouted with great vigor, giving off a very passionate feeling. Got it, why are you shouting? Lower your voice, it's not like we can't hear you. A sudden rebuttal followed Shen Xingyan's words, his tone also carrying a sense of excited emotion. Hearing this voice, Wang Kai couldn't help but turn his head to look at Shen Xingyan's clone standing beside him, tilting his little skeleton head in some confusion. But Shen Xingyan felt no surprise at all. After all, he was controlling the clone to say that. Every time he finished saying such words, there was always no response, which made him feel a bit awkward. But now, with the clone, it was different. Not only could it work, but it could also communicate normally, although it was just himself communicating with himself. And he found this feeling of refuting himself quite interesting, as if the other self in everyone's heart had materialized. The pre-labor pastime ended, and the busy labor began simultaneously. Although the increase in strawberry to 6 mu of land resulted in a significant increase in today's workload compared to yesterday. However, with the clone sharing the workload for Shen Xingyan, he himself felt much more relaxed compared to yesterday. But this was only relative. The reality was not optimistic, and double prompts still appeared from time to time, leaving the two Shen Xingyan with no time to rest. After nearly 2 hours of labor, when Shen Xingyan's stamina was almost at the warning line, the star origin maintenance prompts began to slow down. At this time, Shen Xingyan's clone had also reached its final existence time, successfully completing its mission for this appearance. Shen Xingyan smiled as he controlled the clone to wave goodbye to himself. The last second ended, and the clone turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared. At the same time, the wisp of consciousness that Shen Xingyan had attached to the clone also returned to his mind. The returning consciousness made him feel a little dazed for a moment, then he returned to normal. Facing such a novel feeling, Shen Xingyan also shook his head and sighed, wondering if he would encounter more magical things in the future. After eating some food to restore his stamina, Shen Xingyan looked at the acre of potatoes that had already matured. But because they had all been busy with maintenance work, they hadn't had time to harvest them. Shen Xingyan couldn't treat potatoes like he did other crops, simply pulling them out by the roots. After all, potatoes buried in the soil had their own temper. If Shen Xingyan dared to pull them hard, they would hide in the soil, making him fumble around. Shen Xingyan had to call in 3 little skeletons, including Wang Kai, to help him harvest with special tools for harvesting potatoes. During this time, he also had to constantly attend to the maintenance prompts for other farmlands. So the harvest of this acre of potatoes was indeed much slower, taking more than half an hour to complete. And as the last potato was found from the farmland, Shen Xingyan also stood up and stretched. At this moment, the star origin prompt appeared in his ears as expected. Congratulations, you have planted 600 square meters of potatoes this time, with a yield of 7,800 kilograms, gaining 1560 farmer professional experience points. Shen Xingyan, whose face was originally full of fatigue, suddenly radiated an unusual glow after hearing about this harvest. And his entire state seemed to have improved out of thin air. I actually harvested 7,800 kilograms this time. That's 800 kilograms more than the last record-breaking time, another record breakthrough for sure. Haha. I just don't know what kind of reward star origin world will give me this time. Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan's hands couldn't help but start rubbing back and forth. The anticipation on his face completely undisguised, and he knew that even if he wanted to hide it, he probably couldn't. Wang Kai and the others, who had already finished harvesting potatoes and were waiting for Shen Xingyan's next command, were already somewhat used to seeing their master show this expression once again, and they did not make any particularly confused movements. Chapter 110, Star Origin World did not make Shen Xingyan wait long. Not long after the potato harvest prompt appeared, the reward for his record-breaking achievement was directly announced in his ear. Congratulations! You have once again broken your previous record of 7,000 kilograms of potato yield per mu, successfully reaching 7,800 kilograms. You are specially rewarded with 1 talent skill growth stone. Star Origin will make a full zone announcement. Would you like to make the information public? After hearing this reward prompt, Shen Xingyan was slightly stunned for a moment. Then, in his ecstasy, he instinctively and loudly said, "Don't make it public, don't make it public, stop the prompt, I'll give you 100 silver coins, quickly cancel it for me." Shen Xingyan, being familiar with the process, had already anticipated Star Origin's next move. So he directly took out 100 silver coins, to pay before Star Origin World could even display the prompt. His swiftness in paying this time was even greater than before, as if he wasn't giving money, but a burning hot potato. Star Origin World did not refuse Shen Xingyan, who had already learned to answer quickly and very decisively took the hot potato. As 100 silver coins disappeared from Shen Xingyan's hand, the prompt asking for money indeed did not appear again. Seeing this, Shen Xingyan finally let out a sigh of relief and relaxed. He knew that the talent stone reward a few days ago had almost brought trouble upon him, the culprit. Fortunately, he was prepared in advance and managed to get through it safely. If Star Origin World were to issue another world announcement about a talent stone reward, the investigation into the farmer unrest, which had just subsided in the real world, would definitely flare up again and become even more intense. If he was not careful, or if he encountered an enforcer who would rather kill 1,000 innocents than let one guilty person go, the final outcome would not be good. After all, the status of peasant professional in the real world is indeed not high. He was more than willing to spend money to eliminate this risk. After dealing with this matter, Shen Xingyan opened his backpack space with a face full of pleasant surprise. His gaze directly falling upon the little stone that, although pitch black, appeared exceptionally adorable. Item: Talent Skill Growth Stone Primary Category. Special Item Rarity, Rare Quantity, 1 Attribute, Talent Skill Synchronization Growth +1 Background. Formed from some special shattered stones during the early stages of Star Origin's creation, certain special abilities emerged as Star Origin World grew and evolved. It's still the same attribute as last time, the same primary stone. It seems that the primary talent stone should be among the breakthrough rewards for both first-level and second-level crops. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but analyze gleefully. Although this talent stone reward was not the intermediate talent stone he had previously guessed, he was already satisfied. In fact, he wished that every record-breaking reward would be this pitch-black little stone. One should know that the value of this stone is immeasurable, which can be seen from the extensive search efforts in the real world. Moreover, the gold content of the talent skill synchronization attribute in the talent stone is truly incomparable to ordinary money. If that amount of gold coins were placed in front of Shen Xingyan, it would probably build a high mountain. Shen Xingyan carefully held the little stone in his palm, admiring this stone he had longed for. He noticed that its distinctly angular black color, when viewed from different angles, would surprisingly reveal a unique and very charming hue. Looking at Wang Kai, who was standing beside him, Shen Xingyan gently patted him, then said cheerfully, "Wang Kai, get ready for an attribute boost. The next time we meet, you'll be a different Wang Kai. With this stone, your master will be able to summon more and more little skeletons for you in the future. Work hard. From now on, you won't just be a captain. In the future, you'll have the task of becoming a general, Wang Kai skeleton general. It sounds majestic." Although Shen Xingyan's words were full of a seductive flavor, Wang Kai seemed to have truly taken them to heart. The occasional faint glow in his eyes began to flash continuously, expressing Wang Kai's soaring emotions. However, Shen Xingyan, who was currently looking at the sky and envisioning the future, did not notice this abnormality. After stuffing a big pie into Wang Kai's mouth, he no longer hesitated and directly issued the command to use the talent skill growth stone with a thought. And with that, the same situation occurred again. Shen Xingyan only felt his body shake, and then his vision went black as he was kicked out of Star Origin World. However, unlike his surprise and panic last time, he was unusually calm this time, even having a faint smile on his face when he was kicked out. Shen Xingyan gently rubbed his temples, then his consciousness went to his Star Origin card to check his attribute panel talent. Summon Skeleton summons 3 skeleton monsters, with all attributes at 3 to fight cooldown 24 hours at this point. His skill had indeed, as he had guessed, not only increased the full attributes of the little skeletons by 1 point, but also increased the number of little skeletons summoned each time to 3. Upon seeing this, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. Just as he was about to express his joyful emotions, he immediately realized that this was the inner ring area with many people. And there were many neighbors close to him, so he couldn't be too flamboyant. He could only clench his fists tightly and shake them vigorously several times to vent his excited emotions. After a while, he lay down again, connected his consciousness to his star origin card, and returned to his planting space. The first thing Shen Xingyan did upon arriving here was to look at Wang Kai, who was working, and found that his attributes, just like last time, had also become a little skeleton with all attributes at 3, along with the improvement of his skill. Upon seeing Shen Xingyan return, Wang Kai also immediately put down what he was doing and walked to Shen Xingyan's side. With a movement speed of 3, he now walked almost like a normal child. Shen Xingyan laughed heartily and pressed Wang Kai's skull, which wore a small straw hat. His eyes looking at the 8 mu of farmland in front of him, feeling a surge of exhilaration in his heart. With the upgraded skill, his hard days were finally over. The little skeletons with all attributes at 3, although not yet reaching the exaggerated extent of one being worth 2, had indeed improved a lot in their labor. With 28 little skeletons improving simultaneously, their overall labor capacity increase, based on this number, could be compared to that of a dozen or more little skeletons from before. Chapter 111. The reappearance of the talent stone allowed Shen Xingyan to greatly improve his ability to deal with Xingyuan's maintenance prompts, and he became more confident in handling the massive amount of farmland work after using his professional skills. Currently in an excited state, he looked at the experience value in his attribute panel, 3958/3000, which clearly met his upgrade requirements. Shen Xingyan was naturally no exception to this moment, which all professionals most anticipated, as leveling up would grant him 12 attribute points, and no professional would complain about having too many attributes. He unhesitatingly focused his thoughts on the upgrade prompt, and with a slight movement of his mind, Xingyuan's prompt appeared beside his ear. Congratulations! Your professional rank has increased to rank 12, rewarding you with all attributes +2, free attribute points +4, professional skill cooldown -2%. We hope you continue to work hard and improve. With the appearance of the prompt, his experience bar also changed to 958/4000, meaning he would need 4,000 experience points to level up again. Shen Xingyan understood this and was not surprised. He checked his attribute panel and saw that all attribute values had increased by 2 points, and he nodded slightly. He then unhesitatingly added 4 free attribute points to primordial energy, bringing his primordial energy cap to 44 points. After all, the importance of primordial energy was becoming increasingly prominent, especially with the appearance of the clone skill, which could indirectly turn 4 free attribute points into 8 points across the 4 main attributes. Although it was only a temporary boost, it was still quite terrifying. Seeing the skill cooldown reduced by another 2%, Shen Xingyan's face was filled with an uncontrollable smile. Including this increase, his professional skills' total cooldown reduction had now reached 13%, equivalent to reducing the cooldown time by more than 3 hours. If there were no delays in casting, he could cast it 1 more time every 7 days. From now on, regardless of the crop, its growth period would change from a maximum of 10 days to 9 days. Shen Xingyan couldn't even imagine how terrifying the effect would be when planting more advanced crops in the future. Next was the harvest of this crop. Shen Xingyan opened his backpack space and checked the attributes of the potatoes that had just helped him break through the star origin record item. Potato outstanding value, 20 copper coins quantity, 7,800 attribute, a basic food with a strong feeling of fullness. Item, potato leaves outstanding value, 6 copper coins quantity, 2,200 attribute, a type of feed for raising animals. This is somewhat unexpected. It's peerless grade potatoes. I remember the last time I harvested potatoes, they were excellent plus grade. This time, they directly improved to outstanding quality, and the only difference between the two harvests was the timing of my professional skill cast. It seems that my professional skill, when applied to nearly mature crops, has a very significant effect on improving their grade. While somewhat delighted, Shen Xingyin also became more certain of his thoughts. Although these harvests seemed insignificant compared to the rewards for breaking records like the talent stone, the reality was that these harvests had to exist first to break the record and receive rewards. He was clear about the sequence. Moreover, although his assets were now immeasurable, his actual money was less than 1.5 gold coins, and one of those gold coins was borrowed. He still had a relatively large demand for actual money. Shen Xingyin opened the Star Origin Mall and sold all the crops he had harvested, receiving a total of 169 coins and 200 copper coins. He then smiled at the little skeletons who were leisurely working. The improvement of their talent also led to the improvement of their attributes. They no longer felt the previous urgency when working, returning to the relaxed state they had when they first planted wheat. He called Wang Kai over, and the man and the skeleton collaborated to plant the 7th farmland of strawberries. Seeing that everything was done, Shen Xingyin did not linger there, as he still needed to leave more time for casting his talent skill in the afternoon. He smiled and patted Wang Kai's head, then disappeared from the spot, his consciousness returning to the real world. Wang Kai, on the other hand, stood still for a long time, looking at the spot where its master had disappeared, as if contemplating something. Then it raised its increasingly refined hand bones, and a joyful ghostly light began to flicker in its eye sockets. When the ghostly light dissipated, he also began to work in the farmland, while observing the other little skeletons. Back in the real world, Shen Xingyin looked at the ceiling, replaying the events of breaking the record in his mind. The smile on his lips lingering for a long time before finally fading. Invigorated, he began his day's exercise. After stepping out of his room, he slowly walked towards the training hall, observing the pedestrians on the road around him. At this time, more people were out consuming, with various adherents of hedonism strolling through various recreational venues. They relaxed their weary nerves, temporarily setting aside the disasters that surrounded them. From their attire, it could be roughly judged that most of them were peasant professional, with very few combat professionists. Although Shen Xingyin disapproved of them wasting time on such trivial matters instead of exercising to improve their physical fitness, he could also understand their thoughts. After all, most of them were professionals with no hope for the future, feeling that any effort was futile. Coupled with the existence of Star Origin, they felt that there was little difference between training and not training. Except for those professionals who bravely stood on the front lines to fight. These professionals who stayed in the base year-round found it difficult to ignite much fighting spirit. If Shen Xingyin had not encountered unforgettable hatred that kept him constantly on edge, always thinking of going out to exterminate disasters. Otherwise, when he first awakened as a farmer, he would have started to give up, just ensuring that he and his sister would not starve. He would never have thought of exercising himself in reality, while diligently saving money to help his sister improve. And then having to venture into the extraterritorial world to struggle when he got old. Someone always has to step up. With great power comes great responsibility. Shen Xingyin couldn't help but murmur softly. Immediately, his gaze looked back to the border of the North District, the place where he would fight in the future. At this moment, he seemed to see that dangerous land he would eventually set foot on, his eyes filled with unwavering resolve. Chapter 112. Yo, kid, you haven't been very punctual lately, sometimes early, sometimes late. What have you been busy with? And Ning, who was leisurely sitting at the front desk, asked with a puzzled expression when Shen Xingyin arrived at the training hall. Shen Xingyin merely smiled faintly, vaguely mentioning that he had been busy with some things recently, and didn't elaborate further. After a brief chat, Shen Xingyin headed straight for the strength training area. And Ning looked at his retreating figure and couldn't help but sigh slightly. Young people are truly full of vitality. She didn't dwell on it, as it was already quite difficult for young people like Shen Xingyan to persevere. And it was unreasonable to expect him to have a regular routine like those old-timers. Shen Xingyan arrived at the strength training area and adjusted the difficulty level of the equipment to slightly exceed his maximum endurance. This was because his training time today was limited. He could only train here for a little over 3 hours, and then he had to return home to summon his 3 little skeletons. He couldn't enter the star origin world in this place, as it was indeed unwise to separate his consciousness from his body in the outside world. Don't even mention it, this strength training beyond the limit is really a bit strenuous. Shen Xingyan muttered subconsciously after feeling the difficulty of the equipment. Just as he was about to begin his training, he suddenly seemed to remember something, slapped his forehead, and thought with a hint of annoyance. Today, I was so engrossed in cultivating and breaking records that I actually forgot about the important comprehension skill, wasting such a long cooldown period. What a waste! At this moment, Shen Xingyan had a regretful expression, feeling like he wanted to give himself a good smack. He had a mind to go to the physique training area and immediately use the skill. But upon looking at the strength training equipment in front of him, he suddenly changed his mind. He thought that if he used this insight time for strength and agility training, it should also yield good results, as the initial improvement in physique training was very significant. Thinking of this, he made a decision, then unhesitatingly expended all his primordial energy and activated the comprehension skill. The activation of the comprehension skill caused Shen Xingyan's comprehension ability value to skyrocket. At this moment, he didn't waste the precious insight time and immediately began his strength training. In this state, as he trained, he clearly felt that his own training movements were not quite right. He felt that in his previous strength training, many areas were not properly exercised, leading to extremely low training efficiency. Moreover, if some movements weren't adjusted, they could even cause significant damage to his body. This feeling made him jump in surprise. If he had such a thought during normal times, he might have dismissed it as an illusion, however. In the state of insight, such thoughts were 99% correct. Is this the difference between a genius and an ordinary person? Just one round yields so much insight, completely outperforming years of my own research. Truly terrifying. At this moment, as Shen Xingyan sighed, he also formally recognized the fact that he was an ordinary person, through the comparison between his physique training and strength training. After one round of strength training movements, the transparent figure in Shen Xingyan's mind reappeared. However, at this time, the transparent figure, just like during physique training, was a blurry sensation, making it difficult for Shen Xingyan to see clearly. But compared to physique training, his intuition was somewhat clearer. Shen Xingyan, noticing this situation, didn't pay it any mind. Instead, he focused on improving the current strength training movements, including aspects such as force application points and intensity techniques. The effect was also very significant. With the gradually improved movements, the equipment's difficulty, which exceeded Shen Xingyan's own limit, no longer seemed so difficult. He even felt somewhat relaxed. This discovery made Shen Xingyan's eyes light up, and his motivation for training also became more abundant. Under this improved training, his physical strength also seemed to be greatly conserved invisibly. The strength training, which was originally the most physically demanding, was now alleviated. However, not long after he started this kind of training, he suddenly felt a significant increase in the strength in his upper arm. After a slight stun, his heart was also filled with joy. He quickly took out his star origin card to check strength. 14 points physical attack, 14 points indeed after a few days. Driven by the comprehension skill, his strength attribute increased by another point, and his physical attack power also increased accordingly. The effect of these improved strength training movements is truly immediate, directly reflected in the attributes. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but exclaim, then quickly seized the time to continue training and refining his movements. After half an hour of this, Shen Xingyan temporarily gave up on refining his strength training movements and instead quickly walked to the agility training area. If there are errors in both physique and strength training movements, then agility will certainly also have some major issues. It's better to adjust them all first. Thinking this, Shen Xingyan quickly adjusted the equipment and then began his agility training. And as he expected, as soon as he started agility training, he discovered many problems under the perception of his high comprehension ability. My training really has a lot of problems. It's quite remarkable that I was able to achieve full attribute awakening under such incorrect training before. Looking back now, it was truly amazing. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but cover his face and sigh as he realized the current situation. Although he thought this in his heart, he also knew that perseverance was the only key to improving himself. Therefore, his training steps showed no sign of stopping. He continued to refine the deficiencies and errors in his training. This continuous process of self-correction also made him feel very interesting. However, not long after, his speed suddenly increased, and his body also became more flexible. This feeling suddenly enlightened him, and his face lit up with joy. With a slight thought, his star origin card appeared on his forehead, and his attribute panel unfolded before him: agility. 14-point speed. 14 points. Seeing the changes in the attribute panel, Shen Xingyan grew even fonder of his comprehension skill. No, I must quickly earn money to extract the primordial energy attribute points so that the comprehension skill can become even stronger. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but think. Chapter 113. Although both strength and agility attributes improved within an hour, which was a welcome development. However, Shen Xingyan understood that this was merely a result of quantitative change, leading to qualitative change. Further attribute improvements would require daily accumulation. Therefore, he dared not slack off in continuing to optimize his exercise movements and incorporating them into his daily routine. Shen Xingyan maintained this state of identifying and correcting problems until the insight time was about to end. Just as he saw that only a few seconds of insight remained and was about to temporarily stop exercising, he suddenly noticed that the transparent figure in his mind seemed to undergo an instantaneous change. The transparent figure, which had always been in a blurry state, suddenly became clear, and its movements were intuitively displayed before Shen Xingyan. Shen Xingyan, noticing this change, was about to observe it carefully, but found that the insight time had already ended. And the little man disappeared in place with the end of the insight time. What you can't get is always stirring. This feeling of almost getting something only to lose it instantly made Shen Xingyan feel an unbearable itch in his heart. After all, he had been waiting for several days out of curiosity about the transparent figure. Now that it was right before his eyes, it suddenly disappeared again. Anyone in his position would go crazy for a bit. Although he had only taken a fleeting glance just now, he felt as if there was an inexplicable concept in the transparent figure's movements. However, he was powerless regarding this matter, and could only wait until the next time the comprehension skill was activated to see what the situation truly was. Shen Xingyan also adjusted his mindset. Seeing that he still had over 2 hours of exercise time remaining, he did not delay and continued to exercise using the improved movements. By the time all the exercises were completed, Shen Xingyan also felt the clear difference between the pre-improvement and post-improvement exercise movements. Previously, when he was at school, he would always feel pain in some parts of his body after exercising. At the time, he only thought it was because he had worked those areas, and mistakenly believed it was a sign of improving physical fitness. However, after exercising with the improved movements this time, his body felt exceptionally comfortable. A fundamental difference from before, and the superiority was immediately apparent. This made him exclaim with emotion, "Only when the Tao is right can one walk smoothly." This saying is indeed true. After bidding farewell to Sister Ning at the front desk, Shen Xingyan walked out of the training hall, picked up his sister, and returned home together. Striking while the iron was hot, he taught his sister all 3 improved exercise movements one by one, then let her comprehend them on her own. He then went into the kitchen to cook their meal. Not long after they finished eating, Shen Xingying went to exercise. Shen Xingyan also returned to his room and connected his star origin card to enter the star origin world. In the planting space, as soon as Shen Xingyan landed, he immediately activated his innate skill, Summon Skeleton. He began to chant softly with practiced ease, and then the ground before him began to shake, its amplitude exceeding any previous first time. However, he had anticipated this and remained calm, continuing his chant undisturbed. As 3 mounds began to rise, it wasn't long before today's 3 little skeletons were summoned. Wang Kai, who was standing by observing, upon seeing his master summon 3 subordinates at once, immediately turned his head to look at his master. If Wang Kai could have expressions at this moment, he would undoubtedly be filled with admiration and shock. Shen Xingyan looked at the 3 little skeletons that had just emerged from the ground before him, chuckled softly, and handed them all over to Wang Kai. He sighed inwardly. He had increased the number of little skeletons summoned from 1 to 3 in 20 days. And in the future, as he more frequently break through star origin records, the speed of this increase might become even faster. The shocking scene he had once envisioned, where swarms of skeletons would appear with a flick of his hand, was indeed slowly coming true, so much so that he felt a surge of excitement just thinking about it now. Wang Kai, your subordinates have now increased to 30. Do you want to arrange 2 assistants to help you? After all, as our little skeletons grow more numerous in the future, I'm afraid you won't be able to manage them all. Shen Xingyan sat on the ground, supporting his body with his hands behind him, speaking with a relaxed and proud expression. His words exuded a strong sense of versatile, along with great confidence in forming a skeleton army in the future. However, no sooner had his voice fallen than 2 little skeletons walked towards him from the farmland and slowly stopped in front of him. Shen Xingyan looked at these 2 little skeletons with some confusion, not understanding why they weren't working in the fields but had come to him. But when he saw Wang Kai also looking at him from the side and remembered what he had just said, he seemed to instantly understand something in his heart. Wang Kai, you can actually understand my questions. Shen Xingyan, somewhat slow on the uptake at this moment, immediately stood up in surprise, his eyes full of curiosity as he intently scrutinized Wang Kai. He had originally only wanted to chat with Wang Kai for a while. After all, there was still some star origin dwelling time left, so he wasn't in a hurry to go back. The feeling of the planting space still made him feel exceptionally comfortable. Moreover, in his previous rambling, he hadn't explicitly asked Wang Kai a question, yet he hadn't expected Wang Kai to actually make a choice. Now, thinking back, it seemed that every time he gave an order, Wang Kai always completed it perfectly. Was there a reason for this aspect as well? With one insight leading to another, Shen Xingyan immediately became excited, his eyes on Wang Kai growing even more radiant. Why didn't I think of it before? Our Wang Kai is so special. Immediately, to confirm his idea, he quickly pulled out a silver coin and a copper coin from his wallet. Placing one in each hand and asked, Wang Kai, which of these 2 things is more valuable? No sooner had his voice fallen than Wang Kai's skull pointed towards the hand, holding the silver coin. Shen Xingyan, who had been watching Wang Kai's performance with excited eyes, immediately jumped up in excitement at the sight. He could now basically conclude that Wang Kai possessed a certain degree of judgment. Although he didn't know how it had come about, this was undoubtedly a huge blessing. A skeleton general with judgment versus a skeleton general who only executes commands. The difference between the 2 is still very significant. Wang Kai, you truly live up to being my capable subordinate. Shen Xingyan excitedly patted Wang Kai's skull, then turned his gaze to the 2 little skeletons assisting Wang Kai before him. And couldn't help but begin to ponder. He needed to give names to the 2 vice captains as well. He couldn't just keep calling them little skeleton, but what kind of names would be good? Chapter 114. Shen Xingyan looked at the 2 little skeletons standing before him. Their appearance was clearly not as robust and healthy as the little skeletons he had summoned recently. They were likely among the first batch of little skeletons he had summoned, and also the few subordinates who had followed Wang Kai the longest. It seems that subordinates are a reflection of their master. Wang Kai is indeed like me, both of us are nostalgic. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but sigh with emotion, then looked at Wang Kai with doting affection, expressing his approval of its choice. Since they are both the first little skeletons to follow me, let's give them names in the same series as Wang Kai. A flash of inspiration struck Shen Xingyan, and the prototypes of 2 names formed in his mind. He then chuckled and walked over to the little skeleton that appeared slightly older. You shall be named Leifu, using the grass radical for Lai. This fits your image of constantly working on the farmland during this period, and it also establishes a connection with crops, further expressing that crops are a source of good fortune. Shen Xingyan said softly, placing his hand on the little skeleton's, or Leifu's, skull. As his thoughts moved, the little skeleton's attribute panel immediately appeared before him. He casually changed the name column in the attributes from little skeleton to Leifu. Seeing the name change, it was considered a formal promotion to vice captain. As Shen Xingyan completed the name modification for the little skeleton before him, in a subtle detail he didn't notice. The little skeleton in front of him trembled slightly, as if an unusual power had been injected into its body. At the same time, it made the surrounding little skeletons perceive it differently. Shen Xingyan, however, didn't feel anything. He put away Leifu's attribute panel, then looked at the other little skeleton. After a brief thought, he didn't hesitate and directly changed this little skeleton's name to Leiqian. Leifu Leiqian, these 2 names sound auspicious and festive. Shen Xingyan murmured the 2 names, very pleased with the names he had chosen, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Shen Xingyan gently patted Leifu and Leiqian before him and gave the command. From now on, you 2 will be Wang Kai's left and right assistants. All orders must be obeyed from Wang Kai. When I'm not around, help Wang Kai manage the entire team of skeletons. Shen Xingyan's words were full of absolute meaning. This was the first time he had given such a long command to little skeletons other than Wang Kai, and fearing they wouldn't understand, he spoke a bit more than usual. Upon receiving this command, Leifu and Leiqian seemed to understand the meaning of Shen Xingyan's words. They immediately walked to Wang Kai's side, standing one on its left and one on its right. Shen Xingyan smiled and nodded gently at the management trio standing together, hoping in his heart. Under Wang Kai's leadership, perhaps these 2 little skeletons will also develop the ability to make judgments. When I take them out in the future, perhaps the Skeleton Legion will be even more unstoppable when fighting against disasters. He then checked the growth of crops at various stages in the farmland and compared them with descriptions from real-world data. After a short while, he sighed and shook his head, not because the crops weren't growing well, but because their growth far exceeded what was recorded, rendering the data completely without reference value. Looking at the little skeletons, leisurely working in the farmland, they had all attribute enhancements from the farmland and were taking care of it 24 hours a day without interruption. With Wang Kai, the captain, controlling the overall situation, and now 2 additional assistants helping from the side, he felt incredibly at ease. After checking around with Wang Kai and the 3 skeletons, Shen Xingyan saw that his time in Star Origin World was running out. He then bid farewell to Wang Kai and the others and disappeared from the spot. After Shen Xingyan disappeared, Leifu and Leiqian, who were standing to Wang Kai's left and right, moved to stand before Wang Kai, assuming a single-knee kneeling posture, as if expressing submission and gratitude. Wang Kai, however, looked at the spot where Shen Xingyan had disappeared, completely ignoring Leifu and Leiqian's actions. If Shen Xingyan had seen this scene, he would likely have found such a human-like display incredibly unbelievable, thus developing immense curiosity about the mystery of the little skeletons. At this moment, Shen Xingyan, who had returned to the real world, naturally didn't know what had happened after he left. His consciousness returned to his body, and after a brief pause, he went directly to the training room to exercise. During this time, he also advised his sister, who had a bit of a training maniac attribute on various key points of exercise, sharing all his understanding of training. As for how much his sister would ultimately understand, he didn't care, as whether she trained well or poorly wouldn't affect her future status, as a second-generation rich anyway. As her brother explained, the light in Shen Xingying's eyes grew brighter, as if a new world had opened up, and her gaze towards her brother became increasingly adoring. Shen Xingyin continued this training until 12 a.m. Seeing that the time in Star Origin world had reset, he finally stopped training and returned to his planting space. Upon returning, he focused on checking the growth of the watermelons. At this time, the small watermelons had already begun to show, looking very cute. At the same time, he began to calculate the upcoming harvest time. Based on the time calculation, the 35-day growth cycle watermelons should now be nearing 27 days of growth progress. After applying his skill around 9 a.m., the watermelon's growth cycle will be close to 31 days. Accounting for natural growth time, it still needs one more skill acceleration to mature. This means it still requires 2 more skill applications before the watermelons are ready for harvest. He then checked the progress of the strawberries. The first acre of strawberries planted earlier, after several days of natural growth and acceleration, had reached 36 days. There were still 14 days until full maturity, meaning 3 more skill applications were needed. The second acre of strawberries would require 4 skill applications, and so on. As long as he controlled the timing of each skill application, and assuming no skill application failures, he could ensure that each daily harvest would break a new record, effectively beginning his wool-shearing plan. Thinking this, Shen Xingyin couldn't help but fantasize about what rewards a 50-day strawberry record-breaking would bring him. I hope everything goes smoothly in between. Shen Xingyin thought of the possible failure rate and silently prayed for a moment. Chapter 115. After a quick calculation, Shen Xingyin had a rough estimate in his mind. He then slowly walked to the edge of the farmland and lay down comfortably, simultaneously activating his origin energy cultivation function and entering a sleep state. With the activation of Tranquility skill and the tenfold training acceleration, the surrounding primordial energy particles sensed it and began to appear, rushing towards him and rapidly merging into his body. The skeletons who were working also noticed their master's state. At first, they were confused. But as these scenes occurred multiple times, they treated it like their master suddenly disappearing, believing it to be his special ability. Shen Xingyin maintained this state for 6 hours before emerging from his meditative state, slowly opening his tightly shut eyes. Upon seeing the endlessly captivating sky of Star Origin world, he felt refreshed and invigorated. After opening his attribute panel to check his status, he found that all his attributes had reached their maximum, and his primordial energy cap had increased to 0.5, which made him smile with satisfaction. He sat up with a slight laziness, and seeing the steadily growing crop in the farmland, Shen Xingyin's mood also brightened. Waking up to such a serene scene every time was indeed much more pleasant than looking at the ceiling before. After briefly enjoying the pleasant atmosphere, Shen Xingyin returned to the real world with a thought. After having breakfast with his sister and seeing her off to school, Shen Xingyin then went to Star Origin world to cultivate for 2 hours, while waiting for his professional skills cooldown to finish. At this time, although Shen Xingyin had entered a cultivate state, he had not fallen asleep. He still lay there quietly, watching the small particles enter his body. And in this state, he also discovered the light green small particles that he had not noticed before. What's going on with these light green small particles floating out of the farmland? They're a bit different from the transparent figure. Could this also be another form of primordial energy? Shen Xingyin watched as the light green small particles merged into his body without causing any unusual reactions, and he couldn't help but speculate. After all, he had recently deeply felt the versatility of primordial energy. It could not only enhance insight, but also generate clones and even affect the farmland, making it a truly versatile existence. He carefully examined it again and indeed felt no unusual occurrences, somewhat perplexed. He could only reluctantly give up, treating it as a normal primordial energy phenomenon under 10x cultivate speed. Don't tell me, these light green small particles actually feel quite comfortable. Unable to figure it out, Shen Xingyan began to calmly appreciate them. After 2 hours of origin energy cultivation, Shen Xingyan's professional skill had completed its cooldown and was now ready to be used. As for the upcoming tough battle, although he believed that the little skeletons combined with himself should be able to handle it, he decided to use his clone technique skill just in case. So, he went to Star Origin Mall and bought 3 more primordial energy recovery potions, then took out his novice staff and activated clone technique. After the same process as last time, his dual perspective clone was generated again. Why does the clone look a bit different this time compared to last time? It seems the appearance of the clone is random each time. Shen Xingyan analyzed as he looked at the clone in front of him, whose full attributes were 22. At the same time, he took 2 primordial energy recovery potions consecutively, and after waiting for 2 minutes, he directly activated his professional skill. With a gentle wave of his novice staff, the 8 acres of farmland before him began to grow wildly. Especially the watermelon farmland, where the small watermelons were expanding at a visible rate, giving the impression that, if they continued to expand like this, they would explode. The other strawberry farmland also changed. The first acre of strawberry had stopped growing upwards and was showing signs of bearing fruit. The entire accelerated growth process did not last long, and the effect of the professional skill had fully worn off. What followed was a star origin maintenance, prompt even more intense than before. Shen Xingyan had naturally anticipated this situation, but he didn't specifically arrange the distribution of the little skeletons. Instead, he left it all to Wang Kai, while he and his clone acted as support. After all, in his opinion, no matter how Wang Kai distributed them, the little skeleton's own working ability had improved. And with his and his clone's presence, even if the distribution was wrong, it wouldn't cause much impact. Currently, there were a total of 31 little skeletons, including Wang Kai. Wang Kai distributed 4 little skeletons to each strawberry farmland, and 3 little skeletons to work on the watermelon farmland. Seeing Wang Kai's arrangement, Shen Xingyan nodded in satisfaction. If he were to distribute them, he would probably do it the same way. It seems Wang Kai's coordinating ability is even more impressive than I previously guessed. He truly is a reliable and capable assistant. A smile unconsciously appeared on Shen Xingyan's face. Seeing the skeletons begin to move, he and his clone didn't stand idle either, walking in 2 different directions towards the farmland to provide support separately. After their full attributes were improved, 4 little skeletons could do the work of 6 from before. Their labor capacity was truly powerful. So much so that, when Shen Xingyan and his clone went to support the farmland where double prompts appeared, they effortlessly eliminated them without much effort. Compared to before, the situation was much easier now, and this was even without the little skeletons using their berserk skill. If they used it, Shen Xingyan probably wouldn't have to do anything at all. It's been a long time since I've been this relaxed. I really have to rely on the little skeletons. If I had to plant so much farmland by myself, I estimate that the farmland would not be planted with crop, but with weeds and pests. Shen Xingyan thought with a relaxed expression, and at the same time, he said with a hint of ease, "In a few more days, I estimate I'll be able to go back to the days of just using my skills and then lying down to sleep." This state lasted for nearly 2 hours, and as the star origin maintenance prompt returned to its normal frequency, the clone's 2-hour existence time also ended. Shen Xingyan smiled and waved at himself, and he also returned directly to the real world. After replenishing some energy, he went directly to the training gym next to the school and started exercising. At the same time, he was also waiting for the arrival of the afternoon insight time, wanting to see what secret was hidden behind the transparent figure that suddenly became clear. Chapter 116. While waiting for the comprehension skill to cool down, Shen Xingyan spent 2 hours on strength training and 2 hours on agility training, finally waiting for the comprehension skill's cooldown to complete. Although curiosity made the waiting process a bit difficult, Shen Xingyan, relying on his many years of training experience, successfully immersed himself in the training, weakening the feeling of anxiety. I remember yesterday, the transparent figure suddenly became clear during agility training. So, this time I'll continue with agility training and see what's going on with this little guy. Thinking this, Shen Xingyan unhesitatingly activated the comprehension skill, while his hands didn't stop, continuing with agility training. As the comprehension skill activated, Shen Xingyan's clever intellect once again took the high ground. At this moment, he only felt that his movements had started to become a bit awkward, giving him an urge to correct them immediately. However, he controlled this impulse, as the main purpose this time was to study the transparent figure. Improving his movements could be put aside for a moment. After Shen Xingyan systematically performed a round of agility training, the transparent figure appeared in his mind as expected. The little man that appeared this time was no longer blurry and indistinct as in previous times, like being seen through a large mist, only allowing him to vaguely perceive the little man performing various movements. But now, the transparent figure clearly appeared in his perception, and in high definition. This immediately excited Shen Xingyan, and he then focused all his attention on the little man. What kind of movements are these? Although they seem somewhat related to agility training, it feels like they're completely different. The extremely excited Shen Xingyan became more and more confused the more he watched the little man's movements. The agility training taught in school, while having corresponding movements, mostly required equipment for assistance to achieve results. But the agility in this set of movements seemed to leave no room for equipment to be used. The entire set of movements was a complete whole. Breaking it apart would only greatly reduce its effectiveness. He couldn't help but feel confused that he could see the little man performing such movements during agility training. Fortunately, he was currently in a state of insight. His super high comprehension ability made this confused state last only a moment before he suddenly had a moment of clarity. And several possibilities instantly emerged in his mind, according to my analysis. This set of movements not only includes agility movements, but also strength and physique movements. And even the rhythm within it is very similar to the mental training from school before. Did the transparent figure integrate all the basic training these past few days and create a new set of movements? No, the incomplete martial skill I bought before was repaired and corrected by the little man when I used the comprehension skill. It only had the ability to restore its original appearance, but there was no instance of it creating something new. Then there's another possibility. If these 4 types of training are traced back to their origin, were they originally one? Were they just intentionally or unintentionally separated by the current human race, leading to the current 4 basic training methods being passed down separately? Shen Xingyan had a brainstorm at this moment, and then he thought of many other possibilities, but he negated them all himself. In the end, he still found that the idea of 4 in 1 was the most probable. Otherwise, why would the improved movements of all 4 types of training appear in the transparent figure's movements? It even included the mental training that he hadn't done much since leaving school. Realizing this, Shen Xingyan suddenly had an idea. He hurried to the front desk, asked An Ning for a single quiet room, quickly paid the fee under her confused gaze, and then rushed over. This kid, he usually seems quite steady, why is he so flustered now? And Ning couldn't help but murmur softly as she watched Shen Xingyan's back. Shen Xingyan, eager to learn the transparent figure's movements, had no mind for other people's thoughts. He quickly arrived at a single room, closed the door tightly, and immediately began to learn according to the little man's movements. Under the state of comprehension skill, he learned this set of movements extremely quickly. After only practicing once following the little man's movements, he had already deeply memorized it. Although his movements were far from the profound charm conveyed by the little man, he already had a prototype. And as the movements progressed, his insight also grew more and more, and his movements slowly approached that profound charm. In this state, Shen Xingyan felt as if his entire body was undergoing comprehensive training. Compared to the previous separate training, he felt that the effect was many times better. He was immersed in this feeling of all-around improvement, feeling extremely pleased. At this moment, he felt as if his entire being had become transparent, and the 4 major attributes of his body seemed to have perfectly integrated under this set of movements. However, the reality was not much different from his feeling. At this moment, all his attributes, under the effect of this set of movements, had become indistinguishable, even having a sense of mutual reinforcement and promotion. Among the 4 major attributes, the highest physique attribute at this moment seemed like an elder brother, subtly showing a tendency to feed back into the other attributes under the effect of this set of movements. Shen Xingyan was completely immersed in this captivating feeling, not perceiving the passage of time at all. 1 hour of insight time was about to end under these circumstances. At this moment, his movements were increasingly aligning with the transparent figure. However, within this hour, while he was progressing, the transparent figure also seemed to be progressing faster, giving him a feeling that he could never catch up. Regarding this feeling, Shen Xingyan not only did not feel any sense of powerlessness, but instead became more energetic. How could he not be full of motivation when he had a teacher who was constantly stronger than himself, teaching him hand in hand how to become stronger? As the insight time ended, the transparent figure also disappeared simultaneously. Shen Xingyan also emerged from that state of constantly surpassing himself. At this moment, he felt his body as if it had transformed, and the excited expression on his face could not be suppressed. These movements, which allow for comprehensive and efficient training without external equipment, are truly heaven-defying. It was worth my bitter anticipation these past few days. Shen Xingyan savored the feeling of training in the insight state just now, and his heart couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Feeling refreshed all over, he subconsciously opened his attribute panel, but his eyes widened in shock at the changes in his attributes. Chapter 117. Name, Shen Xingyan ID, 118,120,431 to 9527 Strength, 15 points Agility, 15 points Physique, 16 points Spirit, 11 points Power of Balance Rank 1, Passive, all 4 fixed attributes plus 1 active. Consumes 2 points of primordial energy to activate Power of Balance, temporarily transferring 2 attribute points to a designated attribute, lasting 2 minutes, with a cooldown of 10 minutes. Current progress, 2% at this moment. In Shen Xingyan's attribute panel, not only had all his attributes increased by 1 point, but a new, growable skill, Power of Balance, also appeared under his professional skills. The usual basic training movements are actually a growable skill broken down. This is too much of a surprise. And this skill is even divided into 2 properties, passive and active. The passive all-attribute increase is similar to his previous training, both permanently improving the body's basic attributes, except its improvement range is incomparable to daily training. Previous training only improved a single attribute, and while different attribute trainings did have some impact on overall attributes, the effect was not very significant. But now this Power of Balance is different. Each time it improves, it's an all-attribute increase. This means that if he improves attributes by training this skill, its efficiency will be at least 4 times greater than before. Additionally, this active property is also very useful, essentially allowing him to temporarily allocate a small number of attributes. If he were fighting an enemy and suddenly added other temporarily unimportant attributes to the necessary ones, the combat situation would surely undergo an unexpected reversal. Moreover, according to the skill's description, as long as the progress reaches its maximum, the skill rank will increase. The corresponding attribute bonuses will also increase. Just imagine, once he grows the skill to a certain extent, all his attributes will concentrate on strength with a wave of his hand. And then he will instantly destroy a disaster with one punch. That feeling would be incredibly exhilarating. First, we'll see how difficult the subsequent improvements are. If the difficulty isn't high, it might even be comparable to the rewards from increasing professional ranks in the Star Origin world. Shen Xingyan was so surprised at this moment that he couldn't close his mouth, and various thoughts flooded his mind. With this skill, he felt like he could become a proper warrior. As my Star Origin attributes improve in the future, my comprehension skill will also become stronger and stronger. If I apply it to this skill, my attribute improvements in reality will also become faster and faster. But why would the base separate such a miraculous skill and teach it in a distorted way? If the human race were to cultivate this complete skill, wouldn't it greatly strengthen the human race's power several times over, or is there some reason I don't know about? Shen Xingyan couldn't help but speculate in his heart. However, unable to guess the reason, he could only temporarily set aside his thoughts and continue practicing the movements named equilibrium force. While practicing, he felt his entire body being cleansed. Shen Xingyan's face even showed an expression as if bathed in spring breeze, a stark contrast to his previous monotonous training. 2 hours later, Shen Xingyan, who was immersed in this training, heard his timer ring, pulling him out of his absorbed state. He opened his attribute panel to check the progress of power of balance and found that it had increased to 3%. An increase of 1% in 2 hours meant he could improve by 0.5% per hour. Based on this projection, he could complete a skill upgrade in less than 20 days. And this calculation was conservative, as with the use of his comprehension skill, his movements would increasingly resemble the transparent figure. And the speed of improvement would become faster and faster, gradually compressing this time. Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan felt full of drive. Although he had persisted in training every day before, he had no visible numerical reference, and sometimes he inevitably felt lazy. But now, with progress as a basis, he could see the progress of his gains in real time with each training session, which greatly boosted his enthusiasm. Shen Xingyan walked out of the quiet room with a smile on his face and handed the timer back to a Ning at the front desk. "Oh, you seem to be in a good mood. What's up? Did you get a call from your girlfriend?" And Ning asked with a light laugh, guessing as she looked at Shen Xingyan's joyful expression. "Sister Ning, please don't tease me. I don't have a girlfriend. However, there's something I need to report to you. I probably won't be coming here to train much in the near future. Please thank Teacher Song thoroughly for me if you see him return, and also, please help me hand over this membership card," Shen Xingyan said, pushing the card in his hand back. Now that he had the equilibrium force skill, he no longer needed to go to the training hall, specifically for his workouts. Although the membership card is returned, Teacher Song's sincere kindness cannot be forgotten. I can only see if there's any opportunity to repay him in the future, Shen Xingyan thought to himself. When a Ning heard Shen Xingyan say this, she immediately put away her smile and became puzzled. Through her observations over the past few days, she found that Shen Xingyan was not a child who couldn't endure hardship, and she genuinely thought he was a very good kid. After all, people his age rarely appeared here, and Shen Xingyan had trained continuously for over 10 days, which made her feel he had great potential. But now she didn't know why he would suddenly say such a thing, and she couldn't help but ask curiously, "What happened? Is there anything I can help with?" Shen Xingyan just scratched his head lightly when he heard this. He couldn't tell the truth, but not answering would seem ungrateful for her concern. Helplessly, he could only make an excuse, saying he had recently moved and needed money more. He stopped there, letting the meaning be understood without further elaboration. And Ning, upon hearing this, instantly understood, and a strong sense of pity appeared in her eyes. If Shen Xingyan truly encountered something, she could offer appropriate help out of her appreciation for talent, but for long-term issues like this, she couldn't really intervene. In this era, there were many people like this, fighting in the Star Origin world at night and continuing to work for money during the day. She had seen it many times, but she hadn't expected Shen Xingyan to start this kind of life so young. Thank you, Sister Ning, for taking care of me during this time. Shen Xingyan said softly with a smile, waving goodbye to a Ning and slowly leaving the training hall. Sigh, this kid really has it tough. He has to earn money to support his family at such a young age. What a pity for such perseverance. And Ning sighed with regret as she watched Shen Xingyan's retreating back. Chapter 118. After Shen Xingyan picked up his sister from school, the two of them returned home. Full of vigor from the good news, he busied himself in the kitchen, elevating the richness of their dinner by a notch. Then, under his sister's surprised gaze, the two began their dinner. During the meal, his sister shared various news from her class with Shen Xingyan, and he responded to each, acting as an attentive listener. However, just as he was becoming interested in the children's playful antics and thoughts, he heard his sister suddenly say, "Brother, today patrolmen from the base came to our school. They said it was for some normal investigation, and they asked me a lot of questions about you," Shen Xingyan said, shoveling rice into her mouth. Upon hearing his sister's words, Shen Xingyan paused, thinking, sure enough, the previous incident wasn't so easy to end. It seems the allure of the talent stone is indeed great. Fortunately, I cancelled the world announcement. From now on, I should continue to keep a low profile. As he thought this, he asked, "What questions did they ask you?" Most of them were about your daily activities and whether there was anything unusual in your usual behavior. How could my brother be unusual? It's ridiculous. I just told them the truth. But don't worry, brother, I didn't mention a single word about that secret you told me. Shen Xingyan chattered on like this, raising her eyes towards her brother, the expectation of praise very obvious. Seeing his sister's posture, Shen Xingyan smiled softly, lovingly ruffled her hair, and praised her without reservation. My cute sister is so smart. She'll definitely be stronger than everyone else in the future. Seeing his sister's adorable of-course expression, Shen Xingyan shook his head slightly, but his mind was on what his sister had just said, and he felt a bit of lingering fear. Fortunately, he had been controlling himself daily. Although he knew that if he were eventually found, the outcome wouldn't be particularly dangerous, the fate of being controlled was unavoidable. After all, even if the potential is huge, that's a future matter. Compared to immediate benefits, in this era where individual strength is infinitely magnified, very few people would have the patience to wait for him to grow, and he dared not gamble on that what-if. It's better to just lie low. Give myself at most 1 or 2 more years, and I should have some say then, Shen Xingyan thought silently. After dinner, the siblings, according to the cooldown of his talent skill, went directly to the profession space to summon his little skeleton for the day, bringing the total number of little skeletons to 34. He then returned to the real world and continued to practice equilibrium force in the training room. Without the boost of the comprehension skill, his improvement speed was basically constant. "Oh, brother, why did you change your routine again today?" In the training room, as Shen Xingyan just walked in, she saw that her brother's practice movements were completely different from before, and she couldn't help but ask curiously. Upon hearing his sister's question, Shen Xingyan simply said that he had just learned it today. Then, without holding back, he taught his sister the entire set of movements, move by move. However, after an hour of teaching, he found that his usually clever and bright sister couldn't grasp the essence of these movements, and her actions completely lacked the spirit and charm. This made Shen Xingyan very confused. Could this growth-type skill have some limitations? Thinking of this, his first thought was the comprehension ability problem. After all, he had learned this skill under the state of comprehension skill, and his comprehension ability at that time was as high as 17 points. Even if his sister's comprehension ability was higher than his, reaching the maximum value of 10 points, she still couldn't compare to him at that time. Is it because of the comprehension ability limitation that this set of movements had to be broken down for teaching, so it wasn't widely taught? Shen Xingyan felt that there should be a reason for this, but it shouldn't be only because of this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have never even heard of it. Unable to fully understand, he could only set this doubt aside. Meanwhile, Shen Xingyan, seeing that practicing this set of movements didn't have much effect and wasn't as impactful as her previous physique training. Temporarily gave up and continued to practice the improved body refining movements. Shen Xingyan saw his sister's actions and didn't stop her. Since there was no way to teach his sister this set of movements for now, he could only wait until he had more money in the future to buy more bodhi leaves to help his sister improve her comprehension ability. Perhaps she might even trigger a comprehension skill like his own. If others knew of his "why don't they eat cake" type of thought, it would probably incite a wave of ridicule. Not to mention the limit of each person only being able to use 3 bodhi leaves, even without this restriction. Trying to awaken a skill through bodhi leaves is an extremely difficult endeavor. He could think this way because he didn't know how low the probability of bodhi leaves producing a skill truly was. It was only because he was favored by the goddess of luck that he obtained such a powerful skill. Even if other families were to go bankrupt, it would be very difficult to achieve this goal. Even if a skill could be accidentally generated, it might not be Shen Xingyan's comprehension skill. After all, the description of bodhi leaves simply states that it produces a corresponding skill, and this skill could be any skill related to comprehension ability. At this moment, Shen Xingyan, unaware of how lucky he was, sent his sister, who had trained for 3 hours, back to rest. He continued to train until 12 o'clock, and seeing that it was time to cultivate primordial energy, he ended his training session. He opened his attribute panel to check and found that equilibrium force had reached 6.5% progress. Watching this real-time feedback data, he smiled. Returning to his room, he connected his star origin card and entered the star origin world. Standing in the harmonious planting space, Shen Xingyan looked at the thriving watermelon farmland before him. Squatted down and gently patted a watermelon at his feet, nodding with satisfaction. Once this origin energy cultivation is complete, it will be time to harvest the watermelons. I wonder what kind of surprise this watermelon farmland will bring me, Shen Xingyan murmured with a hint of anticipation. He then briefly checked on the little skeleton's labor situation before walking to his usual comfortable spot and lying down. At the same time, he activated the origin energy cultivation function and quickly entered a state of sleep. Chapter 119. After Shen Xingyan entered a state of sleep, the normally calm spatial boundary began to show ripples. It was like the phenomenon produced by tiny stones thrown into water. If one didn't look closely, it was completely unnoticeable. At this moment, the sleeping Shen Xingyan and the working little skeletons did not notice this anomaly. Time passed slowly until Shen Xingyan's scheduled cultivation time ended and the surrounding small particles instantly disappeared. He also awoke from his meditative state. With his mental energy fully recovered, he stood up refreshed. Seeing the professional skill in his attribute panel that had finished cooling down, he walked directly to the watermelon farmland. Quickly estimating what would happen next if I use the professional skill now. The final maturity period of the watermelons should be about 4 hours longer than their normal growth cycle. Although it's only a very short time, Star Origin World will still judge that there is a risk in casting this professional skill. So I will have to face the probability issue of Star Origin World. This probability issue is really a headache. Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but purse his lips and shake his head gently with a hint of helplessness. For the current situation, he temporarily had no way to break the deadlock. He could only hope that the goddess of luck would favor him again. He looked up at the 34 little skeletons working in the farmland ahead and felt that with their current number, they couldn't fully handle the maintenance tasks after casting the professional skill. He and his clones still needed to help. Seeing this, he, as usual, lightly pointed the small stick that appeared in his hand forward and, with a thought, cast clone technique. Not long after, a clone with a different appearance reappeared. Shen Xingyan controlled him to greet himself, satisfying his mischievous whim. 2 minutes later, 3 bottles of recovery potions were used up, and his primordial energy also returned to full value. Immediately, he cast the professional skill without hesitation. His entire body's primordial energy began to surge, and when the primordial energy gathered on his staff, Xingyuan's prompt appeared again. Just as expected, ding tilde, it is detected that you are casting a professional skill on some crops that are about to mature. There is a possibility of failure in casting this skill on these crops. Do you wish to continue? Seeing this familiar warning prompt stop his skill casting again, Shen Xingyan shook his head helplessly. He made a blessing gesture with his left hand, muttering various words of hope for blessing, and also prayed in his heart. After a full half a minute, just as Star Origin World was about to prompt him to make a choice again, he finally confirmed to continue. As Shen Xingyan confirmed, primordial energy flew from the small stick, instantly covering the entire farmland. And the crops in the farmland began to collectively accelerate their growth. Facing such a grand scene of crop acceleration, Shen Xingyan at this moment had no mind to appreciate it. After all, this time it concerned watermelons with a 35-day growth cycle. As long as they matured, breaking the record was a certainty, which left him with no other concerns. At this moment, his entire focus was on the watermelon farmland, and he was also waiting for Xingyuan's prompt. Highly concentrated, he didn't notice that small holes had broken open at the boundary of the planting space. And one black figure after another crawled in, their target directly pointing towards that watermelon farmland. Congratulations, you have successfully cast a professional skill, Farmer Experience +1. Shen Xingyan instantly relaxed after hearing this prompt with no other text following it. At this moment, the watermelons in front of him rapidly swelled as if inflated. After just a few seconds, he saw the harvestable icon appear above the watermelon farmland, which instantly put him in a great mood. He silently made a wish in his heart, and then prepared to walk towards the other farmlands to deal with Star Origin World's maintenance prompt. However, at this moment, Star Origin World issued another warning prompt, making his body suddenly stiffen. Ding tilde, it is detected that there are foreign species invading your planting space. Please deal with them in time to avoid significant losses. Upon seeing this warning prompt, Shen Xingyan didn't react immediately. After understanding the meaning of the prompt, he quickly looked around and found a group of black, rat-like creatures already approaching his watermelon farmland, and their posture gave off a feeling of locusts passing through. Seeing this group of foreign species, Shen Xingyan took the lead to block them, and at the same time, he summoned his clone, who was preparing to work on the other side. The two of them, one on the left and one on the right, protected the farmland from harm. What's going on? How could monsters invade the planting space so early? Didn't they say this was only a treatment for advanced peasant professional? Shen Xingyan was surprised and couldn't help but complain. He had learned about this before, knowing that when peasant professional reached rank 30, monster invasions would occur. At that time, peasant professional would need to stay in the profession space 24 hours a day to deal with such emergencies. However, his current professional rank was only 12, and this situation had already occurred, which made him sigh. What virtue and ability did he possess? Shen Xingyan locked his gaze on one of the small monsters and then checked its attributes name. Weaken Cha strength, 3 points agility, 4 points physique, 2 points mental, 1 point health. 20/20 points physical attack, 3 points spell attack, 1 point defense, 2 points speed. 4 points looking at the monster's weak attributes, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He had long heard that monsters invading farmlands were highly destructive to crops, but their attributes were not high. Now that he saw it, it was indeed as stated in the data. When Shen Xingyan discovered the monster invasion, he had a concern, whether the little skeletons could hold up when he wasn't around. After all, he couldn't stay in the planting space 24 hours a day. If the monster's attributes were too strong and he wasn't there, wouldn't the crops be ruined? However, after seeing that the monsters only had such attributes, he knew that even when he wasn't there, the little skeletons could easily handle them, which made the stone hanging in his heart finally fall. Shen Xingyan thought for a moment. To be on the safe side, he still called Wang Kai over and personally demonstrated how to deal with such a situation. And he also added this instruction to their code of conduct. Chapter 120. After Shen, Xingyan finished demonstrating the monster-killing action to Wang Kai. Just as he had previously taught him how to do farmland work, he left a chaz to Wang Kai to deal with. This allowed him to personally experience it, making it easier for him to know how to command other little skeletons to handle similar incidents in the future. After all, where there is one, there will be two, since there has been a first monster invasion. There will be a second and a third, and the sooner the little skeletons know how to deal with it, the more at ease he will be. However, a faint worry lingered in his mind. Weakened chaz, does that mean there are unweakened ones? And as the rank of my crop increases in the future, does it mean the monsters will also become stronger? Judging by the current monster attributes, the little skeletons can still handle them, but what if they can't in the future? That's a headache. Shen Xingyan put aside this worry that had not yet materialized, and along with his clone, began to use their full speed and strength to eliminate the small monsters approaching the farmland. The current star origin maintenance alerts were appearing frantically. They needed to quickly resolve these small monsters and then attend to the farmland's maintenance tasks. Shen Xingyan was not at all worried about Wang Kai being unable to defeat the small monsters. As with Wang Kai's current defensive attributes, a chaz with 3 attack power simply couldn't break his defense, let alone cause any harm. And it was only a matter of time before Wang Kai eliminated the small monsters. Shen Xingyan's monster-killing mode at this time was simple and brutal. Basically, with one punch, a puff of green smoke would rise and then dissipate. Sure enough, these small monsters are quest monsters produced by Star Origin World. There isn't even a tiny bit of experience reward after killing them. After killing a large number of small monsters, Shen Xingyan found that he had not received any experience gain notifications from Star Origin World. Disbelieving, he checked his attribute panel, only to see that the experience value column remained motionless. At this, he couldn't help but shake his head slightly. Not only did this incident not provide any experience rewards, but it also added to his worries. And he couldn't help but exclaim, "Why do I always encounter such early events when I plant crops? When I planted potatoes before, the fertilizing task appeared early, and now the monster invasion appeared early. Have I received an early gift package? Or is the value of my watermelon this time too great? Is it already comparable to those rank 4 crops, which is why it triggered this event early? After all, when I harvested potatoes with a 20-day growth cycle, their value was already comparable to rank 3 crops. Now it's the 35-day cycle watermelon. Its value might even be higher than rank 4 crops, so it's reasonable that it would attract these little fellows." Shen Xingyan, who began to analyze this incident in his mind, could only comfort himself with this conjecture. Thinking this, his mood lightened a bit, and he then continued to immerse himself in the labor of eliminating monsters. With his and his clone's current killing speed, it took less than a few minutes for hundreds of chaz to turn into wisps of green smoke and return to Star Origin World. Only when they looked back did they realize that double alerts had already started appearing in the farmland, and they immediately began to support it without stopping. However, at this moment, Shen Xingyan did not notice that, after Wang Kai eliminated the small monster in his hand, the wisp of green smoke that should have dissipated into the Star Origin heavens and earth lingered slightly and did not completely dissipate. Then a bizarre scene occurred. The green smoke, as if by some strange twist of fate, entered Wang Kai's skull, causing Wang Kai, who was originally preparing to go to the field to work, to suddenly stand still in a daze. It wasn't until Shen Xingyan called him to work in the farmland that he slowly walked towards the work area. However, from his frequent look-back glances, it could be seen that he had a feeling of wanting more. In the farmland, although Shen Xingyan and his clone joined the Star Origin maintenance alert a little late, it didn't have a significant impact. After all, with the 3 newly added little skeletons today, plus the reduced maintenance workload due to the watermelon farmland's maturity, the labor force increased significantly, making them more adept at handling the situation, and the entire situation quickly stabilized. Then, after 2 relatively relaxed hours of labor, the star origin world maintenance alerts slowly returned to normal. Shen Xingyan was also freed from the maintenance labor and began to prepare for the upcoming harvest of his watermelon farmland. Shen Xingyan was very experienced in harvesting crop that grew on the ground, and with his backpack space, harvesting was like having a cheat. So he didn't ask other little skeletons for help. He lightly stepped into the melon field. Looking at the round and smooth watermelons, and a hint of anticipation appeared on his face. It wasn't just for the watermelon harvest, but more for the record-breaking reward that would follow. Shen Xingyan squatted down and gently patted the first watermelon to be harvested, feeling a distinct vibration in his hand, indicating that this watermelon had grown perfectly. He nodded with satisfaction, then unceremoniously pulled the watermelon and its vine out by the root and placed them directly into his backpack space. The entire process was incredibly smooth and fluid, taking less than 10 minutes to completely clear the entire melon field. As he put the last watermelon into his backpack, the familiar harvest notification from Star Origin World sounded in his ear without any delay. Congratulations! You have planted 600 square meters of watermelon this time, with a harvest yield of 6,600 kilograms, and gained 2,200 points of farmer experience. Seeing this number, Shen Xingyan smiled happily. 6,600 kilograms of watermelon, this yield is quite surprising. The highest yield I knew of in the real world was only about 4,600 kilograms, a difference of a full 2,000 kilograms. It seems the task stagnation penalty is indeed quite significant. Even those advanced peasant professional who can stay in the planting space 24 hours a day and quickly recover mental energy through cultivation cannot avoid this from happening. Fortunately, I have these little skeletons, my ace troops. Only then could I achieve this feat. I wonder how many kilograms my yield has surpassed the Star Origin world record. Shen Xingyan silently lamented in his heart, while also beginning to anticipate what kind of record-breaking reward would follow. As he was thinking this, Star Origin World did not make him wait long. A record-breaking notification suddenly appeared before his expectant eyes. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more updates and new uploads.